Testing for YouTube. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Hi, Tony and Doug. Can you hear me? It's nice to see you.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yes, we can. Thank you so much. That's great. So if you guys just want to keep your cameras and audio off, and then as soon as you're up, we'll let you know.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to the Committee of the Whole meeting, 6 o'clock, November 18th, 2024. It is obvious that I am not Shari Minions. Madam Mayor is not feeling 100%, so she is at home, but she is joining us via online. So thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and Councilor Patola is on his way as well. We'd like to acknowledge first and recognize that we work, live, and play in the city of Port Alberni, which is situated on the unceded traditional territories of the Sechot and the Huipachesa First Nations. Do we have any late items by the committee members today? No. And any late items identified by the corporate officer?
No late items, Chair Mealy.
So we do have an agenda circulated. And then, of course, we are video recording this, live streaming, recorded and broadcast on YouTube. Can I have a motion that the agenda be approved as circulated? Councillor Solda? Second. Councillor Haggard? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And we have a set of minutes from the meeting 4 o'clock, October 21st, 2024 is presented.
Move to adopt.
Councillor Solda move to adopt.
I'll second.
Councillor Haggard, second. All those in favor? This is the dream team right here. Opposed? Motion is carried. All right, we have public input period, an opportunity for the public to address the committee. Maximum of 6 speakers for no more than 5 minutes each will be accommodated. For those participating electronically, please use your raise your hand feature and you'll be called upon to speak in the order in which it appears. Is there anybody that would like to come forward for public input period? Keep an eye on things. No? You let me off easy. I love that. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll move to delegations then. And the first would be Canadian Maritime Engineering. Madam Corporate Officer.
Thank you, Chair Mealy. We have Tony and Doug Anderson joining electronically, and here they are.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
Can you
good
guys?
evening.
Wonderful. Go right ahead, please.
Yep, good evening, and thank you for allowing us to be here this evening. My name is Tony Kennedy. I'm the president and co-owner of Canadian Maritime. We're very happy to be here tonight to give you a briefing on our operations and what's been happening in the developments of our business in Port Alberni. Doug Anderson joined me. He's our VP of Operations, and he'll speak a little bit about specifically on some of the new work that we're bringing in, which will be the ship recycling business, which is sort of the theme of the evening here to brief you. So CME, quickly, currently we've got 10 locations across the country, coast to coast, approximately 350 employees. 5 of those are fully active shipyards. Our West Coast largest facility is in Port Alberni. It's been growing fairly steadily since we took it over 12 odd years ago. We are currently under a multi-year program to upgrade our Canal Beach and develop our Canal Beach facility, which is coming along well. We've currently got our travel lift underway. It's under construction currently now, which will give us a much larger capacity in the port for handling multi-vessels of much heavier tonnage and size. And also gives the ability to handle quite a number of vessels at one time, which is part of our restriction now. The also business model that we have been developing across the country, not only on the west but on the east coast, has been the recycling of ship vessels, marine vessels. The government of Canada's now have different mandates in place that they want to see the majority of government vessels, particularly Navy and Coast Guard vessels, disposed of in Canada. So that has been part of our model to develop and be able to take on that work. We've done a number of projects east to west ship recycling over the last 10 years. We've done a number of them on the west coast, based out of Nanaimo, which Doug could speak on that. We've currently bid on a number of projects a number of vessels that would be recycled in Port Alberni. Again, it's the attraction there is the larger facility, larger water, deep water access, protected port, and good access to the main markets to remove the recycled product. So basically, I'll let Doug speak a little bit more on the operational side of it, just to kind of give you more in depth about how that typically operates. But we our model is to do stuff safely, obviously within all the environmental regulations, regulatory approvals. We've been working, I guess, close to 10 years, putting all these pieces in place to allow us to be fully qualified. So with that, I'll flip it over to Doug. Maybe Doug, you can just give a bit more history on that process.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Tony. And thank you, everyone, for allowing Tony and I to come down virtually here and explain what ship disposal is. Ship disposal, it's a simple process, but high on the safety, high on the priorities, and high on the processes. Obviously, there's a lot of impact from ship disposal. But to start, we tow the vessel to site, prep it for tow. We'll man it with bilge pumps, lock out the rudder, put safety communications in place so we can get the vessel towed to site. We'd be looking at working out of Papa, the Port Authority down there, on the docks. When the vessel arrives, we quickly put a boom around the vessel, secure it. with the boom, we're looking at West Coast spill response to kind of maintain the boom and monitor it throughout the disposal. At that point in time, we remove all the fluids from the ship and dispose of them. Then we go into hazardous materials removal. We have a third party come in for the for the removal of the hazardous materials. They hoard and coordinate off the vessel, set up all the safety environments for starting to removal. That's a large process. It's especially with some of the vessels. You get into some of the older ships and they have a little bit more PCBs and asbestos and whatnot on the vessels. So if it's a newer vessel, you don't have to obviously remove it of many hazardous materials. Once that's good to go, we start to light ship the vessels. So you essentially it's strip out. You go onto the vessels, you remove all the equipment, any of the accommodations and such, electrical, everything gets stripped down to bare hull at that point. After you got it down to steel, we'll lay out the cut lines on the vessels for where we intend to crop it. We'll needle gun those with the HEPA vacs hooked onto the needle gun, so it sucks all the paint out of it. And then we'll cut it into large sections that can be removed and put into 40-foot containers and driven away at this point. Sometimes you have the ability to bring in shears and work the different pieces of equipment or materials with larger equipment that'll nip it down to smaller, more manageable components. But with the road into Port Alberni and that, it just makes sense to truck the larger components out of them. So once we get her down to the car deck, which is all the superstructure removed, we'll then look to bring in a floater dry dock, which will sink the vessel and bring the remaining hull into it. Pump out the water and pull it up, and then we'll work on cutting up the remaining hull into manageable sections with the crane again. So that'll be the last step in the physical disposal of the ship. Of course, all these, as Tony mentioned, the governing bodies involved with this, the federal government, we've got to show a paper trail on whether, sold, recycled, or destroyed. So there'll be 100% paper trail behind the vessel's deconstruction, recycling, all the way down to destroyed materials. So that's your basic, disposal, ship disposal 101 from a higher level. Like I said before, we've brought in third party contractors to work with us on some of their ends as well.
Thanks, Doug. And I guess we'll just flip it maybe back to the floor to see if there's any questions that people may have want to address at this time.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, for filling us in. That's a lot of information. I do appreciate it. So before I get to the other questions, so just maybe an overview really quickly. When you bring the ships in, are they, and I apologize if I missed that throughout, are they fully contained on land before you start taking pieces apart? Or does the process begin in the water and taking it apart?
Yeah, the process gets started when it's in the water. So like I say, the vessel comes in, it gets boomed around the vessel, and we start to, we remove all the fluids while it's in the water. We remediate all the hazardous materials as it's in the water, and then we will light ship it till it's down to a weight where we can put it on the floater. Throughout the course of this time, the vessel will be hoarded and protected to, so all contaminants are controlled.
Yeah, so there's nothing basic that goes in the water. It's what Doug refers to as light ship. It's basically lightening the vessel up to it gets to the point that we can then remove it out of the water, and then that's when the hull and all of the major cutting is done when it's on the floater, which is fully contained.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. We go to Councillor Solda and Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, gentlemen. What I'd like to know is, I don't know much about the ships in that, but how long does it take to take a ship apart? That's one question, and I'll let you go with that one first.
Sure. So what I alluded to before was basically the abatement of the ship. We can tell you on deconstruction, you're looking at about 3 to 4 months to get the vessel, depending on the size of it, cropped down to ready for disposal at that point. But the abatement end of things, there could be equally as much time in abatement as well. On worst case scenario, if it's the full ship's riddled, you're going to have equal amount of time on the abatement as well. So say if we got 4 or 5 months of construction on the worst case scenario, there'd be 4 to 5 months of abatement on it as well.
Okay, and thank you. And how many ships would you have in with the Port Authority lined up to go? Is it just going to be one, and then you bring in another one once this one is completed, or will they be parked?
Yeah, sure. So this is yet to be determined. It's kind of based on how the contracts will be awarded. The current bid that we're working on and waiting to be determined on awardal is 4 vessels. So there'll be smaller island hopper class vessels that are a little more smaller than what we're used to seeing from the large BC ferries. And like I say, it's yet to be determined on how they want to handle it. If they want 2 disposed of first to start, this is kind of all up in the air at this point. So I could see anything from a couple to 3 maybe showing up for the start of it. Because what we could do is cross work on the 3 of them. We can start we talked about the abatement on some of these could take half the time of the disposal. So that's going to be one of the vessels for sure. So we can start on the other vessels and start working them while we have our abatement crew, working through the rest of the vessels, right?
Okay, and the other question is, when you talked about, okay, so you dry dock and then you sink the vessel and then you cut the remaining hull of the ship. So when you sink the vessel, can you explain that process, please? Because you've dry docked it and now you sink
sorry.
it?
A bit of a communication there. He's actually is sinking the docking vessel, so it's not actually the vessel that we're disposing of. They're just they're basically ballasting down the vessel that's going to pick up the one that's being worked on. So the disposal vessel does not sink.
Okay, but I still have I still have concerns about contamination in our waters. We have enough from the mills from the past and stuff like that. So how do we avoid that? I mean, spillage can happen. So when you start taking the, what is it, when I wrote it down, all the chemicals and stuff out, how do you prevent that? Because things can happen. So I'm quite concerned about that.
Sure.
This is something we're doing nothing different than what happens on the vessels every day. All the fluids go, new fluids gets changed in and out of vessels every day on maintenance programs. This is nothing more than what that, outside of that scope is. We're taking out oils, antifreezes, those types of fluids that are in the engines, cleaning the engines out of it, any of the equipment on board, whether it be compressors and such, it's a hydraulic system, getting rid of the hydraulic fluid. So this is nothing that's outside of normal industry, what goes on, in the Port Alberni, inlet on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, and finally, aesthetically, I mean, you're starting to cut all this down. How are you going to keep, if you have 3 vessels in there, aesthetically, it's not going to always look great. So, or will it look okay. I mean, we have tourists and.
Yeah, no, and I think maybe to just quickly answer that one. We've done multiple vessels now in Nanaimo, which is basically a very busy center, if you will, a lot of, housing and condos there. And the model that Doug has developed, the West Coast team, is basically as they remove stuff, it gets put into these containerized transporters, if you will. So it's essentially, they're packing these dumpsters, if you will, overgrown steel bins that get packed with the material, and then they get removed as soon as they're full, basically. So there's no stockpiling of material or typical anything that would resemble a junkyard. It's basically a working facility that's kept clean and well kept. And as Doug said, there's a lot of scrutiny, both from the environmental department and the overseers of fisheries and oceans, the government of Canada. There's a lot of eyes and ears on this to make sure everything's compliant. And we follow the 14,000 ISO environmental standards. So we make sure that everything we do is safe for the environment. Basically zero impact to the environment.
Thank you, Councillor Solda. Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Chair Mealy. Thank you for coming today. I really appreciate it. And thanks, Doug, for really breaking down the ship disposal process. I have heard that's what your plan is, but I wasn't really sure how it all worked. But thank you. And I was on the Port Authority Dry Dock Committee for the couple of years that it was in place. So I am very familiar with that dry dock concept. My first question is, do you have support from the Shuswap and Huipachesset First Nations for this endeavor?
We
Yes.
do, yeah. We've been in communication with them. In fact, some of the people have had tours of our facility, a couple of different tours. So we definitely are in discussion with them. There was some concern raised on their part, mainly around the fishing, the fishery, the times of when the fishing is the most dominant. So we're certainly on board with them and making sure that they're fully up to speed. And there'll be more ongoing discussions with them as well.
Yeah, we've got a letter of support from the Shuswap Nation as well for this project, and we're also looking to incorporate with them some work for various nation members as well.
Thank you. And my next question is, you did touch on it just a moment ago, but what federal and provincial governing bodies do you answer to? You talked about fisheries and environmental, but who do you answer to? Who oversees your work?
Yeah, so this is a federal contract. They'll have a project management team, and they often hire a third party to audit the process. Inspections, like a monthly type of inspection, ensuring the property's clean, hazardous free, various containment areas cordoned off. So when, like I say, when fluids come out, they get put in an area, transport trucks come and deal with the fluids, the pumper trucks. So it's very process driven. And in all honesty, the government does a good job. We've worked through them on many projects, like Tony's alluded to, and they follow up on everything. And like I say, we have got to have a weight control. Any weight taken off of the boat, it's recorded down, and we got to be accountable for all that weights at the end of the project through disposal, destruction, recycling, any sort of paper trail by third parties, right? And that's all audited.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Haggard. Do we have any other questions from the committee? Councillor Patola, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to follow up on that last answer. That's specifically with regards to this particular federal contract. Is there any plans to receive ships from other providers, for lack of a better term, within the private industry? And if so, what would then be the regulation or inspection or supervision by government agencies in that case?
Yeah, it's that one's a little more liberal at this point because any of the non-government contracts have we haven't seen any of those yet. But one of the things, I don't know if anybody's familiar with the Hong Kong Convention on ship breaking and that. A lot of the industry that is is into this, i.e., BC Ferries. They're going to be, I'm told, they're going to be running their disposal criteria as per the Hong Kong Convention, which is pretty close to a mirror image. I believe the federal government took those components from when they wrote the specifications out for deconstruction in Canada. So.
Yeah, and I just to quickly touch on that, Doug, just to add that anything, if we were to involve a commercial type contract, we would still apply our own standard to that. We may not be competitive because there is still some other companies that maybe substandard. I don't want to say that, but we put ourselves at a very high standard, and to keep all of our certifications and processes followed, and make sure we're fully compliant to take on more government work, we wouldn't risk anything basically to chase a job. So to answer that specifically, we would maintain the same standards.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you, Councillor Patola. Councillor Soul, you had another question?
I do. I'm just kind of curious to know what you're going to be doing. Is this going to be permanent, or is this just for contract basis at this moment? First question.
Sure, yeah, and I can answer that. This is part of our model that we hope to, continue to build, revenue stream for the operation. Create good employment in the area. These vessels typically could average 40 to 80 jobs per vessel. Doug, I'm just sort of throwing some number out there, low to high, depending on the size of the vessel. But it is good, profitable, work that done properly. We think it could be a regular work. Now, we don't expect there's going to be vessels there all the time. Our model is being built on new construction, standard ship repair, marine services. We're pursuing a lot of contracts with the Navy. We've had really good movement with the Navy for bringing vessels up there, as well as Coast Guard. So our main focus is to build the business on that model, not ship breaking. But this is an opportunity here to fill the voids. If there's periods where we don't have contracts in place to keep our people busy, then we see this as a good add-on to that business.
And there's a real need for it too, Tony. In not just BC, but in Canada, there's a lot of older vessels now that everybody's holding back on doing something with them until, the structures and the processes get locked down in place. So, companies like Canadian Maritime Engineering can bid on this stuff and meet the regulations and what's required to dispose of these vessels responsibly.
Yeah, there was one, I think it was 3 years ago, that they did a study, the government of Canada, and they determined there was over 700 derelict vessels in Canada that needed to be properly disposed of. So that's, has been driving a lot of this mandate and process going forward, is how they do that and safely recycle these vessels.
So we're looking at 40 to 80 positions, full-time, part-time, temporary. Where are we going with that? And where else can people take their ships and get taken apart in BC? I know that sounds stupid, but I don't know what else to say to that.
No, not at all.
Yeah, the 40 to 80, it obviously depends on how much work there is, right? But we're a union company, and we like to have we like to have different different teams doing different things. So it allows us to, like Tony alluded to getting more people brought into the company, and keeping our current people moving through the calendar year for sure. So what was your second part of your question?
She had asked about other locations that could do this. So there is several other companies that have been looking at this. There's a number of them have kind of, we feel, dropped somewhat off the radar because they don't want to go to that highest level to dispose of these, so it becomes less profitable, depending on where the contract pricing can come in. But there is currently we've got a bid underway or job underway starting up on the Bartlett with another company for one of the vessels, a Coast Guard vessel that'll be recycled, and that is going to be done in Esquimalt dry dock. So the Canadian government has decided to try to utilize their facility there to recycle some of the ships if the timelines are available. So they did have a window that they think they can do this first one. So that'll be a measure of how well that succeeds on interfering with other ship dockings, because obviously their main focus is to dock vessels there for repair and overhaul and renovation. So beyond that, I believe, Doug, there may be one or two other smaller companies that could potentially go after some of this, but we really don't know. We think that we may be kind of the leading, company as we get more involved in this and have the bigger facility. Our facility in Nanaimo was very, hard to access, small by comparison to Port Alberni. This really opens the door for being able to handle these larger vessels.
Yeah, there's
Thank you,
lots of
Councillor.
opportunity out there for sure.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you, Councillor Sola. Councillor Patola.
So I note you've probably answered this in either general terms or by reference already, but I'm going to ask anyways. And I take into account your ISO 1400 environmental standards and the various criteria of the contract you've already referred to. But most people get their information from media and the internet, and without calling or asking you to comment specifically on any other company or any other operation, certainly in the media and news on Vancouver Island, there's been a lot of negative publicity with regards to ship breaking in a different location than Port Alberni. And I'm wondering what comments you would have, particularly that differentiates your operation from that, those other ones that have been in the news, and any kind of answers that you could give us when people ask us those kinds of questions.
Yeah,
Sure.
sure. I know the site you're talking about without naming names. As far as processes, they were just dragging up the vessels on the beach and disposing of them. I don't think I need to go into too much detail on, how old school that is. This is why there is no larger facilities that have been fully certified for ship disposal. And as Tony alluded to, we've gone through a lot of hoops. We do the jobs correctly with all the disposal processes on this, and it's bringing this up to Port Alberni and meeting all those criteria that I alluded to earlier with, with handling the risk, definitely, stops this from happening, right? They had no control measures in at the site on the inside of the island there. So, it's, and the federal government and BC is learning more and more about how to structure these processes in place. So the wrong company doesn't to get the work, and in fact, it's near impossible now for the wrong company to get the work.
Thank you very much. Thank you for Frank. Anybody else in the committee that would have any questions for these two fine gentlemen? I'll leave it open for Madam Mayor, but I'm not going to force her if she's not feeling 100%. All right.
No, I'm all good. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Appreciate that. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming and updating the community on what you do. Really do appreciate, especially hearing that the local branch, CME, is growing each year. And we do appreciate the employment that you provide as well. And we do appreciate the fact that you consult with all the stakeholders in the area. So thank you for your time today. And we look forward to hearing more of your successes soon.
Thank you kindly as well, Jeff, and thank you everyone for your time. And we have an open policy. If anybody has any questions, certainly send them through to us. We're reachable and would love to address any other concerns you might have.
Yeah, I don't mind giving anybody a show as well if they want to come down and have a look as well.
Wonderful. We appreciate that. Maybe that would be something in the future that council could do as well. So we'll get together with the mayor when she's feeling a little better, and maybe we'll take you up on that. So thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you. Hope you're feeling better, Mayor. Thank you. Have a good evening.
We hope so too. Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Thank you very much, CME. Next up is delegation number 2 is the Alberni Valley Chamber of Commerce. Please step forward. Press the button. Red is good, and away you go.
Thank you so much. All right. Good afternoon, evening. Hi, I'm here. I'm Jolene Dick. I'm the CEO of the Alberni Valley Chamber of Commerce, and I'm first time before you in an official capacity as the CEO of the Chamber. I assumed the role in April 2023, and the last time the Chamber was in front of City Council was October 2021. So we have a lot to pack in 10 minutes, so we're gonna do our best, but very quickly about who we are. We are a not-for-profit membership-based organization that's the voice of business for the Alberni Valley that represents is business of all sizes and sectors, including community groups and not-for-profits. Our board of directors is also governed by Chris Washington here in the audience, our president. I also have Elliot Drew, our director of operations here in the room, and Richard Spencer, who is the historic site coordinator, but he also is a volunteer for the APR and IHS, and I think you're familiar with him. It vibrated at me. Thank you, Sarah. All right, so our vision for the Alberni Valley is to be a vibrant and prosperous business community. So our board did some strategic planning in 2021, 2022, and that's the vision statement. And through our advocacy committee, we will identify those issues that deserve advocacy, and not only identifying issues, but also proposing solutions with that. And so we do that in behind the scenes as well, but our advocacy committee is up and running again. But for example, behind the scenes, we advocated during the Cameron Bluffs wildfire, which we will touch on again. What we do as a Chamber of Commerce, we're a membership-based organization, so we have member services where we have affinity and benefit programs for our members that choose to join. We also support our 220 members by keeping them connected and advocating on their behalf. We also recognize excellence and celebrate success, and we are very excited to do that on November 29th, where some of you will be at our Business Excellence Awards. We have 10 awards to give away this year, and we're really excited. We haven't hosted the awards since 2022, so we're bringing that back, bringing it from the spring season to the fall season to be in alignment with Small Business Month next year. The provincial government kind of took the ideal date to host Excellence Awards during their provincial election. Why we're here though, so we do our member services, we do advocacy, and then we also have are involved in non-dues revenue opportunities, which we're here to speak about today, which is about operating the Port Alberni Visitor Information Center and McLean Mill National Historic Site. So I think we all know, but it's at 2533 Port Alberni Highway, and we operate this Visitor Information Center, which is a designated visitor center underneath Destination BC, through funding with DBC and from yourselves at the City of Port Alberni. Our Chamber of Commerce has always traditionally been together with the Visitor Center. They've kind of come part and parcel, and many chambers still operate visitor centers, but lots have moved away. I don't think we're going to be moving away because our chamber over the years sees the value of tourism, and it is a vital part of our growing economy, and we've always believed in that. And that was said in our investment in owning the land and upgrading the building to that welcoming point as you come into town. And we've done that with our partners, and we welcome visitors from all over the world year-round. So we're not just visitor services. We obviously service folks that come into the door, and it's not just visitors. We have locals that are visiting the shop as well. And so we provide information through walk-ins, phones, emails, social media, and then we partner with Alberni Valley Tourism to make sure that we're getting the right message out to attract people to come and visit Port Alberni. We've also worked with our partners at Community Futures for business retention and all that kind of stuff in the past. And we like to continue to do that work on behalf of the community. Some quick statistics of the hours that we were open and the number of people that came in. But we're not just statistics, we're a service that we're providing. And that was highlighted quite well when we experienced the wildfire in June 2023. And we witnessed it live action with the road closure. It was a scary day. I remember the road closed at 10 a.m. that day. At the beginning of one of my meetings, then it was open, and then at 4 p.m., I have a visitor coming in to tell me that the road is closed, and then it was closed indefinitely until we got a detour in place. So we're not just visitor services, we're a liaison in these times of crisis. We partnered and communicated with yourselves and other local government partners, the visitors, businesses, residents, to try and get timely, accurate, clear information on what's happening, where are we going, what are we doing, what is the detour, can I drive it, is there cell reception, and making sure that we're at least providing that information, but at the same time receiving information to pass along to the people that need the information at the time. So our visitor statistics are submitted monthly with into the Heritage Commission report, which you receive in your packages, I think, and same with McLean Mill. So there's statistics, but without context, there's lots of stories behind the numbers. And I'm just going to pass this over to Elliot.
Hi, everybody. So McLean Mill. It is our pleasure and privilege to manage and steward this premier tourist attraction of Port Alberni. It is so important to our community, not just as a place to be, but to remind us of our history and our heritage. Next one. So just a quick update on the past for those of you who aren't aware. This site is owned by the city. In an agreement with Heritage Canada since 1996, that is a 42-year agreement that will expire in 2038. While there have been many different models of operating the site over the years, it has always been its history and its legacy that people find most interesting. Our predecessors took over the fee-for-service contract to operate the management of McLean Mill in 2020, just in time for COVID and a global pandemic. Also, that was the time where there were some issues raised about the agricultural land reserve and uses for the mill site. We want to thank the city for working hard to do the work to make sure that those issues were resolved properly. I took over in October of 2022, and I was very, very excited to get to work. Since then, I've been able to bring on Richard Spencer, who's our historic site coordinator, and we are the two full-time employees that spend time out at the mill. At that point in 2022, our plan was pretty much what the plan has always been. We have our historic and educational tours. We have our 100-seat McLean Hall with its full-service kitchen for private and community events, a campground of 9 RV sites and 5 tent sites, our on-site gift shop, and a little bit of a pivot on food service to what we're calling the Mill Store Snack Bar, moving away from a full-service restaurant into something that was a little bit more sustainable. So in 2023, we were very, very excited to have what we were considering to be our first full and complete season without impediments. We all know how that went. But the plan was very much that, to continue on as we always had, focusing mainly on face-to-face guided tours. That would be the revenue source. Even though our visitor count definitely suffered because of the closure, you will see that of our almost 3,500 visitors, only 165 that year paid for a tour. It's not a sustainable model. The post-COVID visitor has different expectations, different timelines, different needs. We also were able to host numerous private events and 5 community events, one being, of course, the very, very popular ADAP's Haunted Mill. Our campsite did fairly well with 101 nights stayed. However, that was not booked. Those were mostly, I'm stuck, can I stay here? Kind of nights. Moving forward. So in 2024, we started to take a new track, and that was putting our heritage first. Richard and myself spent a lot of days and hours in consultation with the museum to build a new self-guided walking tour model, which would allow us to return to an admission-style site. We now have 22 A-frame signs along with pictures and write-ups that sit at each one of our stops. The buildings are maintained and open for exploration during our operational hours. That means that this year, almost 1,800 people paid for their self-guided tour. We were still able to have guided tours, and we still offer them, and that did quite well. But it definitely changes the face of our business model, and it allows us to move forward confidently, reinvesting in the site. Of course, the other thing that we'll touch on in just a minute that was very different this year was that we had an opportunity with the 1 Mile Production coming to the site to film their movies, which meant we were closed from September 9th to November 1st while that activity was going on. And this year, our campsite returned to a more normal operation where people actually were booking for 126 nights. So this is just a quick snapshot, but I thought it was important to show you what this looks like. These are our self-generated revenue streams. So of course, this doesn't include any of the fee-for-service or of course the film production in this, but it gives you an idea of how we're making our money. So of course, rentals and events are always going to be our number one, followed by our admission, our gift shop, camping, our community events, guided tours, food service, and then donations. So our plan moving forward is fairly simple. We want to make sure that our visitor experience is job one. We need friendly staff, a safe environment, and informative information to give people the experience that they're looking for. We do that by restoring the we restore the value by restoring the heritage in the site. This will allow us to build on that admission model. The more we have for people to see, the more we have to show, the more we have to tell, we can charge a little bit more. Also, this is a community space with community value. It is very important that we are able to host events. However, with our limited staff resources and revenue, we are no longer putting on events. We host events. And we do that by building community partnerships and allowing other community groups with our resources to build their events, of which we will then take a small revenue split. It allows for both of us to win, and if things go well, that's great for everybody, but if things don't, then the community groups don't have to put as much on the line. And then finally, delivering a simple but consistent core service. This is something that has been sadly lacking out at the mill. Knowing what's happening year to year, counting on what you're going to see when you go out there. So our admin, our gift shop, our food service, we do not want to advertise or promise something that we cannot deliver on. And that is key. What we offer has to be consistent. It has to be duplicatable year to year to year. And so I just wanted to highlight, these are some of the partners that we have worked with over the 2024 season. And of course, I do want to highlight ADAPS and their Haunted Mill, because this year they were a true partner. When it looked like the movie was going to run over, they were able to take that opportunity and move their event, which I'm sure everybody won in that scenario. But it did require a lot of work for them, and we're really grateful that they took that on.
So when we come before you, of course, we wanted to bring an update. And of course, when we fill out our form, there's a question of us of, what do you want from us? What is our ask? And so as the Chamber of Commerce, we have two asks. One is to continue the investment into these services that are vital to the community, both visitor information and McLean Mill as a National Historic Site, and it's designated as such, and it's a tourism destination and needs caretaking. The other ask is to provide a vision. So what does McLean Mill National Historic Site look like in 5 years and 10 years? We know that some answers may come to us in phase 2 of the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Master Plan, but we would love to see a value statement that we can collaborate on and work towards and incorporate into our annual operating plan and 5-year plan to make sure that we're going towards the same target. One possible vision that I wanted to introduce was this one. And so for context, where this comes from is we work with numerous partners, and two pieces that we touched on tonight actually have corresponding reports that are to be delivered and submitted soon. One is the Cameron Bluffs Wildfire Report, which was funded by Island Coastal Economic Trust. The other part that we're a part of and really happy to be a part of is the Alberni Pacific Railway Working Group, where a feasibility and design and report is coming together. So from that, from the partners at that table, which includes the local nations, is one thing I think is very, very impactful, and maybe it is a possible vision to consider, that it is McLean Mill stands as a living legacy of the Alberni Valley, bridging the past, present, and future, honoring our forestry roots. It involves us as a vibrant gathering place for learning, reflection, and celebration. But one piece that's missing, and we know that's missing, and we need to build capacity in this area, is it needs to be guided by the voices of the Hoopichas and Sishot First Nations. So McLean Mill then transforms and becomes a shared space where all generations are invited to connect with the rich heritage of this land. So we celebrate the spirit of community resilience through the mill and the significance of what the mill is and was, and the natural beauty that defines the Alberni Valley. One piece I know Councillor Mealy suggested I touch on when we were at the Heritage Commission earlier this month was the impact of 1 Mile Productions and what it had to the community. So it was a $3 million boost in revenues to the region. McLean Mill was one location in the sites that was selected for the productions. There were 2 productions in town at the same time. We know Stolen Child was also there, but there was a $3 million impact, and McLean Mill was one location out of multiple that were chosen. We entered into a rental agreement with production. And then we also, outside of the rental agreement, the 1 Mile Productions have improved the site. They have left a legacy of leaving it better than they found it. And that includes repairs and structural repairs to some of the buildings, including mold treatments, heritage window restoration, and site access upgrades. So I think road work is currently underway for the roadways and the parking lots. This is all done in collaboration with the Alberni Valley Museum staff, and a report is going to be submitted outlining the preservation methods to uphold the historical integrity of the site. One example, again, of modifications to the site is one of the buildings in the historic site. When you first enter, it's on your left, the shingles were replaced, but they were not aged. And so when you came, you're like, obviously the shingles have been replaced. This isn't historical. 1 Mile Productions, we can thank them for weathering them to make them look like it's supposed to be. So with that, I just wanted to make sure that approximately $73,000 in site repairs and upgrades was done to the site. So we recognize and understand that because this was an anomaly, an unexpected contract, we fumbled our way through it, but the end, it had a great impact on the community economically and for the site as well. And we will take questions.
Thank you very much, and I do appreciate that update, not just for us, but for the community in general, that there was work done to the site because of it. So there was, we did recoup some value out of that, so I do appreciate that. So questions from the committee? Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Chair Mealy. I was wondering, I love the idea of the self-guided tours and those signage that you have in the pictures. That's fantastic. I think that's always been a dream of what should be out there, and you fulfilled it. So thank you very much for that. I do have a question. Prior to COVID, weddings were starting to become a pretty lucrative income generator for the chamber. And of course, COVID felt everything stopped, and it takes a long time to build that back up again because weddings are planned 1 to 2 years ahead of time. Are weddings starting to come back to the mill yet?
So after we have COVID, we have a massive affordability crisis. So we can say this very quickly in the sense that in 2023, my average event was $3,000. Last year, my average event was about $1,800. People are still coming. They love the site. They love what we have to offer. But now they just don't have the funds. A lot of my discussions are like, if I was going to spend 10 grand on something, it's going to Hawaii. So yes, we are still getting a ton of rentals. We are still getting a lot of interest in the site, and I think that we will continue to grow and build on that. But at this point, we're going to have to do a little bit more to recoup that same kind of dollar.
Thank you. And Jolene, I was going to ask you about that report, how the road closures impacted our community, because I haven't heard anything about it for quite some time, but you said it's going to be released next week?
Soon. I know. This one is delayed yet again. What the last I heard from our contractors is it's with the designers, and so we'll have a product to publicize and circulate as soon as it's available.
When it's completed, will you be able to send us a copy, or
Yes.
are you going to do like a community announcement, or, like, here it is, these are what we found out, or?
Yes, I haven't thought as far as like the reach of engagement, but we would do a news release. Perhaps we will plan some sort of event with our membership and as an event as a chamber to share back what we heard, and these are the themes in summary. Some of that has already kind of been done with some of the focus group folks of this is what we heard, are we on the right track? And so it's taken a while to get that confirmation from the stakeholders that were engaged in that process, and then with the contractors to design and develop the report. So yes, we will do a news release, we will circulate, and perhaps we'll do some sort of chamber luncheon to share the results.
That's awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Councillor Haggard. Anybody else? Councillor Solda.
Elliot, you mentioned about yourself, 2 employees at the mill. Is there any volunteers? And if so, how many? And
So we've gone through a little bit of a change, and part of bringing back volunteerism to the site requires a more extensive plan. So right now, we're working with Canadian summer students during our high season of July and August, which is when this year we charged our admission model. So we have more people on site to kind of fulfill that. We do have a small handful of volunteers and our ambassadors that do come out to help us when we just don't have the people to do a tour or something like that. And of course, the IHS continues to do their work out at the mill. And I know that they would like to do more, but we need to have specific jobs that we want to get done. And when it comes to the historic site, we have ideas and we have plans and we would love to see things. But we have to remember that as the chamber, we manage the site. We do not upkeep the site and the heritage pieces. So this is where building that vision becomes more and more and more important, is that what does council wish that place to be? And who's in charge of getting that work done?
And just one comment. Have you contacted the high school for ambassadors and that to use as part of grad hours if they needed it?
At this point, no, I haven't. Remember, most of our activities as far as are summer. That's when we're really busy. So although we have some high school students that have joined us for a couple of years, and we were really thrilled this year to actually almost our entire staff was returning. Which makes my job a heck of a lot easier because there's a lot to learn when you're asking people to give historic information. It was great to see that the kids wanted to come back and return to us and that they were enjoying their work. But at this point, until we have a program that we know that, again, we can stand behind that's going to be consistent, we have to remember that right now we're running this as a business. And it's great to know that you can augment your business with volunteers, but we have to have the deliverables and be able to keep it sustainable and consistent first and foremost.
Thank you, Councillor Sola. Anybody else would like to have any questions? Councillor Patola, please.
Thank you, through you, Councillor Mealy, to Mr. Drew, first of all, because you just talked about running it like a business. So I'm wondering if you can tell the committee what the annual income for the mill is, and bearing in mind, of course, that there hasn't been a normal year for a number of years. So supplement your answer with instead a projected income or a business case that makes it work income, or whatever you have.
So as you know right now that the city is on a fee-for-service contract, so we receive about this year we receive $130,000. Next year that contract declines by $10,000 every year. So at this point, we're running at about, let's take it this way. In our 2 months of major operations, we're operating at about $30,000 a month income. That is plus or minus everything else depending on what's going on as the season goes. So June can be really great if the weather's cooperative. Some weekends in May can be really great if the weather's cooperative. September, much the same, right? It's very much a outdoor business. So we have those 2 months to guarantee on. What I do know is that right now, we are with the money that the city is in and supporting us with, we are able to operate the site. And much as we said, we're not here to ask for more. We're living within our means and we're making the site improvements that we need to make as we go along. There's not a lot left over, but we're making it work.
Thank you very much, Councillor Patola. Anybody else on the committee? Oh, sorry, I apologize.
Yes, so not to let anybody off the hook, Ms. Dick. I see on the second slide, I think, of your presentation, visitor services, you state your partners include the Alberni Connecticut Regional District, Destination Beach, blah, 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 blah. Just wondering what kind of partnerships those are. Are those just people that, or groups that you sometimes work with, or are they active partnerships, or continuing programs, or one-time events, or what?
Yes, for sure. So Destination BC is a partner because we are a designated visitor center. So they're a Crown Corporation underneath the Ministry of Tourism, Arts, Culture. And so we're part of the Visitor Services Network. And so our partner is our peers across Vancouver Island and throughout BC. So often we are liaising in between. So during Cameron Bluffs, we're talking to Cowichan Valley Visitor Center as well because they're on the other end of the detour. And so we've built our partnerships with our fellow chambers, fellow visitor centers. For VI, they are a destination management organization, formerly known as Tourism Vancouver Island. They're a social enterprise group. They're evolving their business model, and they're a partner, and they provide support as well. They do a variety of things, but where the visitor center and the Alberni Valley come in is they do travel trade. And so they go to Rendezvous Canada and trade shows to go market on our behalf. Black Press, as a partner, is very active. They produce the Alberni Valley Visitors Guide. And so again, this is how 4VI is looped in, is they are editing the content of the visitor center as well, applying their tourism expert lens on that. We, as the partner, are applying that visitor information lens and that local expertise to what should be in the visitor's guide. Things we are and are not advertising. For example, hole in the wall. The cat's out of the bag on that, but we can't put it back in. But you know, we advise to not include images of hole in the wall as a destination. We still get at least one person a day, several dozen in the summer, of coming in and asking about that. So these partners are active. They're not all monetary. They're partnerships to deliver the services. The regional district, we're within them. We also apply for a grant and aid from them to support our operations. And I can't remember who else was on that slide, but we work with them closely.
Okay, great, thanks, that was really helpful. One of your other slides was services that the chamber provides, and you mentioned advocacy a number of times. I'm just wondering if you could elaborate on what advocacy means, for who is it, to who are you advocating?
Yes. So this one, like I said, happens behind the scenes more often than not. And so as the chamber, part of the strategic plan was to reinstate our committees. COVID impacted everybody. We were not excluded from that. But advocacy means identifying the issues and giving voice to them. So truly using our voice and making sure that we are the voice of business, that if there is a process, procedure, issue that needs attention, it gets attention and we use our voice for that. Chambers of Commerce have existed for a very long time, and they were started in France, where a bunch of business merchants got together and didn't like this sort of tax and tariffs that were being put on them without their consultation. So instead of one person, you know, going to the governing bodies of the day and shaking their fist and saying this isn't fair, it impacts my business. Under the umbrella of a Chamber of Commerce, businesses do that, and they should be sheltered underneath the Chamber of Commerce so that we do that advocacy to not only the City of Port Alberni, the Regional District, those would be our wheelhouse in what we do, but we're not excluded from doing that to the provincial government, to our MLA, cabinet, and so on, or to our member of parliament and to the federal government. So we are members of the BC Chamber of Commerce. We pay a fee on our behalf of our members, and we pay a fee on behalf of our members to the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. And so they all have their advocacy wheelhouses. They do surveys and identify issues. So they take positions and provide support to us on issues. What we're seeing right now is the Canada Post strike. And so this is where the more members you have, the stronger your voice. And so the more voices that join the choir, the more impactful it can be. So as we're just getting our advocacy group up and running, we're hoping that those members, chamber members and some of our board as well, will help identify those issues and provide solutions and find a way to collaborate to streamline ways to make sure that business is flourishing, so we do have that vibrant, business-friendly community here in the Alberni Valley.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councilor Patola. Is there anybody else on the committee that has any questions for this defined delegation? Seeing none, thank you very much. Really appreciate you guys coming and updating the community. I understand it's been a long time since you guys come, but you're more than welcome to come back anytime, please. So, yeah, if there's anything else that we can do, by all means, just correspond with us. And but I'm sure that your question tonight is working on a vision for McLean's Mill. I'm sure that will come up in the next little while. So we appreciate you bringing that forward and bringing that request.
Thank you. And if I may answer Councillor Patola's question that he asked of Elliot, I did come prepared with information. So you had asked the revenues of McLean Mill, and so I only have what I have in front of me here. I can't speak to 2020 when we got the contract, but in 2021, it was a deficit year for income from operations, which was at $2,000, $2,052 to be exact. And in 2022, we had income from operations at $27,000, 699, and then 2023 is $78,000. But some of that is our admin costs to pay for our staff and to reinvest back into the site. So these are submitted to the city. I'm not too sure how and when you receive them, but we do definitely get them to your CFO as part of our requirements in our operating agreement. So steady growth, but we definitely need more full-time staff to be able to do that. One thing that I didn't mention about our chamber team on how many staff we have was we have 4 full-time, that includes myself, and 2 part-time. So we're a small but mighty team, and that includes Elliot and Richard, just so you know. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, you guys. Thanks for coming today. Moving on, there are no more delegations. Unfinished business. We have the 5-year financial plan Q&A summary of questions and responses as it relates to the 2025-2029 financial planning process. Who would like to speak on this?
I can just say that there's no updates from when it came forward to last week's regular meeting. Thank you.
No problem. And just a reminder to the community at large, if you have any questions on the budget coming up, bring those questions forward and they will be included on this for all of the community and for council to take into consideration. We don't need a receipt of that, do we? No, not at all. Thank you. There are no staff reports. There is no correspondence. We have new business. First one tonight, Parks and Public Places bylaw. Thanks to our dedicated staff for coming. Whenever you feel ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the city's current parks bylaw was adopted in 1981. So we are a tad overdue for a refresh. So staff have updated the bylaw in front of you this evening to include expanding the list of defined terms to ensure alignment with other city bylaws, and we've provided further detail within the articles of the bylaw. So the committee will see that expanded detail in sections such as fire safety, vehicles, and camping. So this evening, staff are requesting that the committee recommend council introduce and complete 3 readings of the Parks and Public Places bylaw, and our manager of parks and myself would be pleased to answer any questions that the committee has.
Thank you very much, Director. Are there any questions from the committee on this? Again, 1981, it's a long time ago. I noticed, and just for maybe the community, just one of the ones that I picked out here was smoke or smoking. Obviously, 1981, that meant a lot different what it's in 2024. So it's just been upgraded for electronic cigarettes, burning or vaporizing tobacco, marijuana, and other substances. So it's just a refresher, and we really appreciate that. So any questions? Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Chair Mealy. The one section that I'm quite concerned about is 12.4.
Hold on. 12.4 is page 44.
Yeah. It's about when there's no suitable shelter accommodation available in the city, a person experiencing homelessness may erect or occupy a temporary shelter in a public place and between the hours of 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. What I'm concerned about is I don't believe the city has the capacity to enforce this bylaw. I'm assuming we still have only one bylaw officer, so I don't think we're going to be able to enforce this. So I'm quite concerned because we know how encampments have affected other communities and the problems and issues that it brings to a community when encampments happen. If we want to go a little bit further, we could maybe designate a certain park or place where people could, and then contract out services to a nonprofit to make sure that it's monitored and taken care of. But then that becomes a budget item in a very difficult budget year. So I'm quite concerned about this particular item. The rest of it I support.
Through the chair, thanks for that inquiry there. Currently, under human rights, people can set up tents and different public places. The only thing the municipality can do is talk about the times. So for sheltering is a way of keeping the public space during the days occupied. And it's not always through enforcement. So we currently, through our community safety and social development, work with people anytime that they're set up in a public space to help them find either permanent shelter or find the services they need. So I know that this is in a bylaw. It can be concerning that we have to enforce it. Again, we usually don't enforce. That's the last thing we like to do. But it also gives ourselves some tools to talk to people and encourage them to seek the services that are needed, and also gives tools to other enforcement agencies that the city works with, and also social areas that can address this matter. So where it's the reason why most parks bylaws now, or public space bylaws, talk about it is to limit the hours. So during the day, there can be regular enjoyment by most of the residents in those public areas.
Councillor Patola, then Councillor Solda.
Thank you, Chair. So, wow, since 1981. That must have been an overwhelming and arduous task. And I can see from reading it that quite a few things had to be changed. I have comments with regards to the changes that were made, and they're just more or less observations about wording or effect. And in my experience, when redrafting legislation that is particularly old, it's almost impossible. You have to you can't do it in one draft. I'm sure there's been many drafts already, but there's always I's that get dotted, T's that get crossed, and sometimes T's that get dotted and I's that get crossed, and we just got to fix those. So I'm not sure that it's would be of use to go through all of my comments, but I'm quite happy to. Or I could just provide a letter or report back to assist staff. For example, in the definition section, campfires should not just include campfire bans by the province, but also any municipal bans. And I note that there is a section in the redrafted fire bylaw that does that, but there probably a reference across would be appropriate. Definition of controlled substances says except substances permitted in the CDSA, and I'm not sure the CDSA actually permits substances. So a cross-referential inclusion of that definition, it just could be better worded. Drug paraphernalia is a weird thing that we talk about all the time, but nobody ever really defines it. It's not defined in legislation really anywhere, although there are some examples of drug paraphernalia, and the definition really is much more wide-ranging. Doesn't just include things that use, but devices, equipment, and materials that are intended, designed, or modified for use, consumption, cultivation, production, preparation, or administration of illegal drugs or controlled substances. So just an example how if the goal is to control that type of practice in our public spaces, the definition can be much wider ranging to include everything. The reference to an outdoor stove in the definition says a barbecue device, and I'm not sure that outdoor stoves should be limited to just barbecues, or if that would be confusing. Certainly portable stoves, such as backpacker stoves and that, seem to be excluded if we just call it barbecues. So I'm not sure if that might have been the intent or not. The definition of vicious dog says dogs with a known tendency, and known tendency seems a kind of subjective term. Is it a dog that has been identified as a vicious dog by a particular agency that has the authority to do that? Or is it one where just, yeah, the neighbors know that dog is vicious and that's a known tendency? So it's kind of an untestable subjective definition. In section 4.3, I would prefer that council doesn't designate or delegate their authority, but that council just simply makes a policy that then staff follow, just as in the same manner we do with all other, or should do with all other types of bylaw legislation. Let's see. Let's see, I gotta go down now. Section 10.4. Uses, there's just a funny word there. Yes, yeah, so there we go. So that, it seems, obviously that's intended for the general public. There's no exception in there for any bylaw enforcement, SPCA enforcement. What happens if we're talking about wild or feral animals, or anybody that may have a license or an exemption to actually do that kind of thing, because I know we can't have people running around catching geese and roasting them in the park over their barbecue, but at the same time, there may be dangerous feral animals that do need to be controlled. 10.9 has a strange word in it. No person shall permit any dogs or other animals owned or harbored by the person to enter any stream, pool, or lake. I'm not sure what harbored is supposed to mean there, and I think quite possibly it's just a 1981 word that stayed in there somehow. 11.5 refers to a specific purpose, and I think perhaps what it should say is a primary purpose. So no person shall operate a vehicle for the specific purpose of voicing or broadcasting. I think, it just seemed to me that primary was what you were going after. 12.4, which Councillor Haggard already commented on, the item there that seemed possibly troublesome to me, and perhaps a legal opinion might be useful, is that the individual must provide their name. And I'm not sure how that fits with the Charter of Rights, particularly because it's not really a law enforcement matter. So, 12.5, the discretion is in 12.5B. So if property is classified as retained, they can hold and store the property for a period up to 14 days at the manager's discretion. I wasn't sure what discretion was supposed to be referring to, and whether it was the discretion for how long it's retained, or if the discretion was in making the classification. And it seems to me that the method or the discretion should be in the head paragraph in making the classification as to whether or not any property is rubbish or retained property, and allow the manager to have that discretion. Otherwise, we just beg the question of, well, who's deciding whether it's rubbish or not? And we don't want to get into those kind of arguments. I think that's the whole point of the section, is to avoid that. And while I understand that we do need to control the streets. 13.1 seems to say to me that we can't skateboard anymore on the street. And as a aficionado of the Californian lifestyle, I'm not sure if that simply needs to be reworded to be in accordance with designated areas or I'm just not, it seems to be too wide sweeping to me, but that might be what you like, in which case I'll just hang up my skateboard and I'll have to just walk. 13.3 speaks to disturbing the comfort or convenience of an individual. And I'm not sure what type of activity is being captured by the word convenience. And again, that type of open wording, I think, might create problems for anybody in enforcement when an individual says, well, it wasn't convenient for me. They were disturbing my convenience by doing something. Or it was convenient for me to do something and therefore I should be allowed to. And finally, not finally. Sorry, I'd like to close with this one, but 13.4 says there's no sleeping in parks. And having been a lifeguard on beaches in Vancouver for a long time, it's one of my favorite pastimes is on a nice sunny day to go down to the beach and catch a few snoozes. So again, I'm wondering, I understand, I think the intent of that is to prevent situations such as Councillor Haggard was referring to prevent people from just wantonly sleeping and living by sleeping in public places. But that means I'm just going to have to sleep in my car at the beach. That's not quite as nice. And finally, a legal question about 15.1. I'm not sure that we could require people who are fined under a bylaw to pay the costs of the prosecution. That's possible. I'm just not aware of what authority that would come from. And I also noted that in the fire bylaw that there was a reference to, I'm going to get this phrase wrong, but an alternative ticket procedure, that these prosecutions can be done that way and not requiring to go by summary conviction. And that should probably be one of the options that's put in under the offense and penalty sections. So there you go. I said it all and nobody stopped me. But those are just my observations to just tighten it up. But quite honestly, I think that this draft was excellent, and I can only imagine the work that went into it. And I'm very appreciative that we're moving ahead on these types of things so that we can have bylaws that are effective and enforceable and create the type of opportunities for all of the public to enjoy our public places. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Patola. Appreciate that. There is obviously a lot that went into that. So maybe Mr. CAO, if you could just talk about the procedure here. Obviously, we could introduce and complete the 3 readings. However, I would feel that the amount of information that Councillor Patola has brought forward would require us to put that together and perhaps meet this at another meeting. But I'll take your point on anything, sir.
Through the chair, there is several options for council. They can ignore Councillor Patola and move forward with 3 readings. They could also get staff to look at all the areas Councillor Patola could provide it to us, and us to check into some of the questions and bring it back to another committee of the whole or council, whichever the committee would like.
Okay, before we get to that then, is there any other comments from Councillor Haggard, please?
Thank you, Chair Mealy. I understand the human rights issue with 12.4. However, I would like to see, one of the first things I learned when I got elected council is don't approve bylaws that you can't enforce. With one bylaw officer working for the whole city of Port Alberni, there is no way that we can enforce this. So it can very quickly go into a full encampment, and with all the issues that other communities have had, and we've seen that on the news many, many times. So unless the city is willing to put financial resources in order to support this bylaw, then I'm not going to be able to support it. We need financial resources if you want to include this. Thank you.
Anyone else on the committee would like to have a say? Councillor Solda?
I'm just kind of curious to know, CAO, maybe you can explain how can we enforce a bylaw? I know we're short of a bylaw officer, so maybe you can tell us the grander picture.
Yeah, so through the chair, there's lots of bylaws out there that currently we couldn't enforce with one bylaw officer or two bylaw officers. Bylaws are put in place for the last resort to be enforcement. I totally understand what Councillor Haggard is saying on that one. One part that leaves the city open without having a bylaw that sets hours for public spaces. Currently under the human rights, those situations can occur anyway. I'm not saying that they would. I'm not saying they would if we had a bylaw there. Again, we are complaint driven. We do have a process on dealing with people that decide to set up shelter, and enforcement is that last opportunity. But there's many parts of this bylaw that we probably wouldn't be enforcing in the regular. A lot of bylaws are written and almost are community policed, and people become aware that that's not prohibited and move on and don't cause any issues, so there isn't enforcement. So Councillor is correct. If we wanted to enforce every bylaw we have, we would need a lot more bylaw officers. And if we wanted to alleviate the city of bylaws we don't enforce on a proactive basis all the time, then we would be rescinding a lot of bylaws. We currently can only enforce by complaint-based, and even there we are very busy. So we do the best based on the policy that was developed and passed by council, that we address safety first, and then we go from there. So we do try to do our best as the bylaw department, but with the limited staff we do have, we can only enforce certain parts of bylaws.
Officer.
Well, it's just interesting too. I mean, RCMP with the helmets, the bike helmets, they don't enforce that. And I was told, do you want us to go to a murder or something like that? Whatever is more important in crime, or to stop and tell somebody they have to have a helmet. So that's what I was told in the past. But I personally would like to see this document taken back. I think it's a great document. Definitely we needed to upgrade. Times have definitely changed, and this council has heard this before from me. And just to take a look at Councillor Petola's suggestions and stuff like that, whether yay or nay, but I do believe, I don't want to rush it, I want to do it right, and I would like to see it go back.
Councillor Patola?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Councillor Haggard that there is no point having bylaws if they're unenforceable. But in my experience, the concept of enforceability has to do with the proper writing of the bylaw, the lack of confusing terminology, and the inclusion of executable penalty sections, so that there is actually a way to enforce them. Enforcement is really not done by an officer. Compliance is done by an officer. Officers will go out and tell people, for lack of a better term, I don't like that, sorry, will converse with people who may be in violation, and that violation may come to an end. If the officer isn't able to achieve compliance, then the officer writes the ticket, and the enforcement is then done through the next stage in the process of enforcing the payment of that ticket. So I agree, bylaws must be enforceable, otherwise they're useless and laws are useless. But the staffing of individuals to ensure compliance occurs is, I think, a different issue than just the bylaw itself. That's more of an operations issue, where the bylaw is a policy issue, legislative issue, and the enforceability comes from really good writing. And like I say, this has vastly improved over the 1981 version. But I have already obviously made some comments about further improvement, and those would add, in my opinion, to the enforceability. But like the CAO says, you could just ignore me, and then we could just move on. But if nobody else makes a motion, then I will make a motion. I'll leave it at that.
Well, thank you, Councilor Patola. I was just merely going to recommend that the committee can direct staff to address Councilor Patola's comments and bring back at a future committee of the whole meeting. Is that something that this council would do, or this committee would do? Do you have
So
a
moved.
Councilor Patola with a move? Second by
second.
Councilor Solda. So that's to direct staff to address Councilor Patola's comments and bring back at a future committee of the whole meeting. Any discussion on that? Madam Mayor, if you have any discussion on that? I'm not trying to point you out here, but obviously I'd like to give you an opportunity if you'd like to say something. And if not, say less, it's okay. Councilor Patola in the meantime.
I wonder if instead of referring to me by name, it could just be the committee's comments, and that would certainly include the queries put forth by Councillor Haggard as well.
My apologies, absolutely. So if that's okay, it's to me, committee directs staff to address the committee's comments and to bring back at a future committee of the whole. If we're all right with that? The seconder's okay with that? Any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you very much, staff. But again, 1981, a long time ago. So it's come a long way in a really short time. We do appreciate that. Next up, 2024-2028 financial plan amendments. And we have a report from the Director of Finance providing recommended financial plan amendments. And we have the Director of Finance with us tonight. At your leisure, sir.
Thank you, Chair Mealy. So tonight there is some recommendations that staff have made to the committee for amendments to the 2024-2028 financial plan. The first one involves the police contract with the RCMP. The updated information that was provided and the details are provided within the report. Also, the Vancouver Island Regional Library, another update to their financial plan and a reduction from what we've seen in the 2024-2028 plan. Confirmation of the reserve to which the IHS train operations and capital work has been done. And with that, I provide the opportunity for the committee to ask any questions before considering the recommendations.
To the committee we go. Who has questions? Councilor Patola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My questions are with regards to items 3 and 4. Just to make sure that I've got it right, those amounts were already approved for spending, but it was just a question of what funds they were allocated from? Is that correct?
Jeremy Lee, so when we made the resolution to amend the plan, there wasn't that confirmation of the reserve to which they came from. In order for that project to proceed along with the operations for 2024, council provided the recommendation to proceed, but not to the exact funds. So in order to firm that up for year end and the financial plan, the recommendation is to take it from the Alberni Valley Community Forest versus the growing community funds. That was the indication at the time, and we're just looking for that confirmation that that is the case for the committee to give their recommendation to council.
Questions, other? Councilor Haggard, Councilor Solda? No? Go ahead, please, Councilor Solda.
I guess my concerns is the RCMP, and I understand, I mean, it's contract, it's all to do with their contract and everything like that, and the library is just going up and up and up. And I know that's big on the radar, and I know we have to pay it, but I just have a lot of concerns on that.
Just a statement. Thank you, Councilor Solda. Is there any other questions from the committee? Councilor Patola again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move that the Committee of the Whole recommend Council amends the City of Port Alberni 2024 to 2028 financial Plan bylaw number 5097 2024 as follows. Items I, and IV, being 1, 2, 3, and 4, as stated in the report.
Thank you very much, Councillor Patola. Councillor Haggard is a seconder. And again, if it's not explained, it is in our agenda as well. So just Councillor Patola is taking the opportunity to shorten the meeting up a little bit, which is really nice. But it is on record, so it's all there. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you very much, Mr. McGiver. Appreciate it. Next up, we have facility condition assessment. Another report from the Director of Finance. Please, sir.
Thank you, Chair Mealy. Just to give some context to the information that's provided, we've received some information from our consultant that was working on the facility condition assessments. These are recommendations from that consultant. We still have some work to do as far as reviewing the capacity that we have, both financially and staff, for the projects, but administration felt it was important that we bring forward these this information in order for us to start the discussion about the many challenges that we have as far as the infrastructure, facilities, and other cost pressures in the 2025-2029 plan. With that kind of qualifier, we will bring further information back as far as some details, but wanted to hear from the committee as far as what what we'd like to see as far as context, details, because we are going to look at providing information in a little bit more different format than previously, a little bit more information. I think we've heard from the committee and council that we need to make improvements as far as information, as far as details, so it supports the good decision-making process that we need to make. So as you see within the report and the appendix, each facility has its 5-year plan that's populated with the information that we have at this date. What we would like to do is provide the information also with the operation for that facility, and then what the tax implications are in that year for that facility. It provides the detail to allow for that fulsome approach. So when we look at a facility such as the old arena, that's a facility that was brought to council, I think, in your first run at it, Chair Mealy, as far as what's the expectation of that facility. We did have a demo RFP that was prepared for that, and we had community come to council of the day and save that building for the purposes it has now. Understanding when we look at that facility, there is a lot of work that needs to be done, and we have many priorities. So I know that this is not a fulsome report, but it's an indicator of where we're heading, what we have, and just starting the discussion that council needs to have about our facilities. I think it's good information, but you should expect more information coming forward to support those decisions. But I think it's a good opportunity to have the discussion tonight.
Thank you very much, and I totally agree. Thank you, Mr. Director. And it is nice that you and the rest of staff has come forward, even though the report's not fully finished, but to give council kind of a heads up on what's coming up. And again, we talk about, say, the Industrial Heritage Center. We have $301,000 for 2025, and then we have roof replacement arena side for $474,000 in 2026, and then the roof replacement for the curling spot in 2030 for $1.1 million. So that's a lot of money, and it's great that the committee, council, and through the budget process knows about it earlier rather than later. So I really do appreciate that. Committee, do you have any questions from the committee? Councillor Solda.
All right, I'd like to start with, where do I want to start? 81?
Page 81?
Yep. And just, I know we have to change the rink boards and stuff like that, so I'm just kind of curious to know, it's 500,000, I believe, was the rink board replacement? Yeah. Could you maybe explain again to the public why we need to change it? Because it still works and everything, and is there more of a lifespan that we can wait? Because it might take the 2025 taxes down. I'm looking at starting to take some taxes down here.
Sure, Millie. So I think this is a project that has been identified for the last couple of years. We have a facility that, is a new facility as far as many of our facilities that we do have, but it is aging. It's over 20 years old now. And those boards are getting to the point where we need to look at replacing. We've made some indications to our users that we would be making improvements to these boards. They are still being utilized. They are at the end of life, and we will be bringing a report forward to allow council to consider the options for replacement. As I mentioned, this is a preliminary report. This was one project, though, that was identified in the financial plan already, and I think staff have been making some progression on this item. So we will bring forward that detailed information for consideration, but it is definitely a project that has been identified for the last couple of years.
So going with that, I understand that. And I sit on council, so I know it's there. But if we put half into a contingency and then did the following year, another half, that would be $250,000. I'm just looking at knocking some things off. Could we do that? And would that be feasible? That's one question, and then I'll go to the next question.
Yeah, through the chair, I think on the rink boards themselves, it was discussed last year in depth and moved to this year. We've done some projects. We have some options coming, as the Director of Finance said. They are becoming costly in repairs and re-drilling them out. The actual boards are popping off. People are catching their hockey equipment on it. It's being ripped. Some of the doors don't close. If there's a hard hit, the doors open by themselves. So when you ask if there's some safety questions, I would say there is. And to further let them degrade could cause injury, or could also cause other teams that come here to play not wanting to play here. So I think it is a decision for council to make. There is a report coming. Staff has looked at this quite intensely and looked at the most cost-effective way. And again, this report is the consultant's report. So this is straight off the press from the consultants. You'll see when staff does an analyzing on some of the parts. I think the areas from this report that we need to look at that were not identified in the 2025 budget. So this is raw data, and when we bring the report forward, we'll actually explain what was in the 25 budget before, so last year, and which ones are not present in the report. And we should be also looking at some of the buildings where council weren't on council's radars, and possible some action there if council wants us to. Yes, it does cost, but there are items there of further studies, feasibilities, and I think we'll be bringing forward. That's where the Director of Finance talked about staff capacity. We won't be able to undertake all the studies that are recommended in year 2025, so maybe we will spread some of those out. And then if there are some facilities that are in question whether or not we are going to keep running them in the same manner, maybe there would be direction from council for us to work with the organizations that are in the facilities to move forward on. There's also in this report, there are items that if we want to take the risk of a facility not being able to be open because of a mechanical failure of something that we are not to replace, I could bring up the aquatic center. There's a pump in there. Could we let the pump run and hope it doesn't break down? We could push that to another year, but then we have to be willing to maybe shut it down for 2 to 3 months while we get the approval from council to order a pump that may be needed, and then we have to source it, get it here, install it. So again, if we're going to be proactive maintenance on our facilities, that's one way we can look at it. But if council's tolerance for risk is higher and doesn't mind some of the results of not fixing some of this, we can also take that action. So I think this is great for conversation and understanding where we're at, but we will be bringing things forward. So on the boards one, I do think that staff has moved forward and have a very thorough report coming forward for council to make a decision on that at the, I believe, next council meeting. Yeah, I believe so. Or one of the meetings coming up really soon. Yeah, thanks.
So I'm wondering if my questions that I'm going to ask, which would, on facilities, maybe needs to go to a separate meeting to go through all our facilities one by one and just talk about what do we want to do with the facilities, where we want to go, and that might be at the strategic plan or something like that. Because I mean, I can go through each one of my page numbers here and you know, like I understand, and I'm big on safety first. So I have no problem parking this and bringing it up later. I don't know which direction do we want to go, where we want to go, and do we want to have just a discussion on this report as it's turned in?
Well, just really quick before we get to Mr. CAO, just we're merely looking at the information that is brought before us today ahead of time, a little ahead of time, rather than just so council can kind of get an idea and get a grip. But again, we're going to be going through the reasoning why shortly. So sorry, Mr. CAO.
No, I think that's true. But if council does have questions today, we'd love to hear what your questions are. So the report that we bring forward can even inform those questions more. The rink board one that came up, we just happen to have lots of information because we're actually working on the report right now. So I'm sure there are lots here that you'll have some inquiries on, which may give us some background on the information that you're looking for. So if council does have any information that you're seeking, that is one of the reasons why we did bring it forward today.
And I can concur with the rink boards being a volunteer at the arena, that the doors have been, and kudos to staff because the doors were flying open at any point and they were able to jury rig the system a little bit and make it as safe as possible for not just the players but for the people inside. And I literally have a handful of screws inside the penalty box area that I'm saving up. So totally understand. So who would like to go first? Director of Finance.
Yeah. So Chair Mealy, I think as administration, we're looking to the committee to give us some indication of what their desire is. And I understand, you know, Councillor Solda is looking for maybe options to defer and whatnot. And that's great to hear. And we want to hear that. But, you know, in a general sense, if, you know, the target last year was a certain amount, does the committee seek that same level of capital expenditure? Are they willing to push it, willing to drop it from that, understanding that the percentage is around 15-16% this year? So please, you know, ask the questions, please, you know, kind of give an indication of what information you'd like to see, or in a general sense, what you know, the committee is going to make a recommendation to council. So that's the hope tonight, and that's why we wanted to bring this forward.
Thank you very much. Just really quickly, Madam Mayor has got her hand up, so we'd love to go to Mayor Minions. Madam Mayor, if you're there, you have your hand up, I see, so just love to give you the opportunity to speak. I see that you're unmuted, but we cannot hear you. We did hear you earlier. Nope, she's muted again. Not too sure. While we get that figured out, anybody else on the committee who would like to? Councillor Hager.
Thank you. In regards to the rink boards, Councillor Solda, we have put this already for a couple of years, and if you're a hockey player, you'd know that is a safety issue. I just want to make a comment about the aquatic center. Is right now the regional district is working through a proposal for a new aquatic facility, but the numbers are coming in and some of the directors are balking now about how expensive a new facility is going to be. So they are talking about how much it's going to cost to actually refurbish the existing pool, or even if that is possible. So my hopes is that they will fund a consultant to come in, give us the hard numbers if it's a possibility to refurbish the old pool versus building a new pool. So we may not have to do some of these renovations because we know that the existing pool is at end of life. It's probably past end of life. We just kind of hold our breath from year to year that it's going to keep operating. So the only concern that I would have would be in the 2028 to have over $1 million for the tile pool basin and deck area. And the next year, you have a $60,000 to construct a new aquatic center. So that doesn't make sense to me to spend $1 million one year and build a new one next year. So I think for the pool, we know it's end of life. Let's try and keep it operating from year to year, but no big expenditures.
Thank you, Chair Mealy, to Councillor Haggard. So I think what we're looking at is just the different options with that one. So understanding that aquatic center is at end of life. We have kind of choices to make, and it's not a combination. It might be an either or, but we just wanted to provide some context to the committee, to council, to the public that, you know, it could fail at some point, and if we don't start planning for that failure, you know, we have to start putting these monies in, but it could fail beyond repair, and we have to understand that. So this is an information kind of process, trying to understand what we're faced with moving forward, and if we do go, you know, alone, or that's a project combined, we have to start considering that.
Councillor Patola, then Councillor Solda. And, oh, actually, Councillor Patola, can we give 1 second? 1 second. Madam Mayor, are you still have your hand up? Have we solved this problem yet? I'd just love to give the mayor the opportunity. Yes, sir.
She's just messaged that she's going to send a comment to Sarah.
Wonderful. Okay, so Councillor Patola, and then we will wait and see if we have a comment yet, and if not, then Councillor Solda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think really appreciate information coming forward sooner rather than later, and giving us an opportunity to kind of prepare ourselves for the full report when it comes. And I understand these numbers are out of the report. I guess my one question is, as they're dispersed in this report through the 2025 to 2029 budget in specific years, is that because that is when it's expected that item will fail and needs to be replaced by? Like, is that reflective of its remaining life, or is that reflective of trying to spread the costs over a 5-year period?
Yeah. Chair Mealy, to Councillor Patola. So I believe it is what the consultant has provided as far as dates that we should be replacing this. I think there was some components that we had identified. Some of those dates have been moved forward. And as I mentioned off the start, I believe it's going to be something that our manager of facilities will review and update. But I'm fairly confident that these are raw numbers, because the manager had been kind of throwing these at me as soon as he could provide them to me, and knowing that, you know, we're trying to get information for the financial plan forward. This was the result, and I know it's not perfect. We'd like to give you more information, but I think we just wanted to get this out in front and have a discussion. So, but I can confirm that once we know exactly what it is.
Yeah, no, sure. It's perfect enough for me. And and if that is a piece of information that can be further clarified, that's great. It's just, if we're here asking what the committee might like, that's something I might like. Particularly because if we know the time element to these items, we can calculate the cost of deferral on the average CPI for construction. and knowing that if we defer 1 year, we might save whatever that cost is in taxes that year, but knowing that it will then be the same amount plus in a following year. And that's, I think, helpful information when council comes around to deciding whether we're going to do something 1 year or another year, to realize that there are significant cost implications in delaying. So in the same way, just another comment is if there are items that have been deferred from previous years, it might be interesting to note them, footnote them, or star them or something, so that we know that that was a amount that was less in a previous year, and now it's in the budget this year for its current inflated amount, and in future it's going to be inflated even more. Thanks. Just my comments.
Thank you, Councilor Patola. We're going to go to Director of Corporate Services, or Corporate Officer, sorry.
Thank you, Chair Mealy. So I do have some comments here that the mayor has sent, and so she just generally wanted to express her appreciation for the information in this report and for Andrew bringing it forward sooner rather than later, and notes that it will be important for council to have an opportunity to go over the results of the full report when it is available and comes forward. As some of the larger facility costs start to move closer, council will need to have service level discussions about how many facilities we need to have as a municipality. Some of the discussions won't be easy, so having as much information as possible when this comes back to council will be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Appreciate those comments and absolutely, totally agree. Councilor Solda had a fair amount of questions here.
Well, I'm
going to leave you in charge for 2 seconds as well.
Oh, no, yeah, okay. No, I'm just kidding. So I'm going to just go with the next year's budget. I'm just not going to, I'm going to park my questions for the 26, the 28 and, or whatever as we move along. So I just want to go to the page 82 and Parks and Rec, the Cedar Room dividers. What is wrong with our dividers at the moment that we need to replace them at the, for $40,000? Just kind of curious.
Yeah, through the chair, we can get that information and make sure we bring it forward.
Okay, I don't know if there's any issues there, but I just kind of curious. Things like safety, I agree with all that and everything, so I'm just going to carry on to page 82, but I think that's in, I'm going to leave that one because, oh, it's a renewal. So when we get to renewals, and is it just because, you know, it's lived its lifetime? Is that why we're just going ahead with renewals and stuff like that? And the question I had was in 2029, so I'm just going to leave it, but I'm just kind of curious to know when we say renewals, what does that mean?
Madam Chair, that would be the renewal of that asset because it's at end of life. So it is exactly that. It's it's an asset we have, but now we need to replace that. So we're renewing that.
And a lot of times, if I may,
Yeah, go ahead.
To my fine committee members, there will be a renewal schedule or cycle, and so sometimes those would be showing up as that is it's going to be expected to be replaced at 2030. So that's where that's going to be.
All right, thank you. And now I just want to go to the fire hall on page 83. So we have $400,741, replace roof and skylights. So how old is the roof and do we need to do it? Do it because there's leak or what's happening there?
Chair Mealy, so this is something that came from the WSP report. It wasn't something that we had on our original capital plan for 2025. So it's been identified for replacement from the report. I don't know how old this is, but we will provide that information when we come back with more fulsome information.
All right, and it'll be interesting because reading the fire chief's report, it'll be interesting to hear comments on other topics too regarding the fire hall. Page 88, for some reason I have earmarked that, so we're gonna just go all the way down. Maybe that's, Yeah, so I'll just wait because there's more comments. I can wait until we get to that page.
Any other comments? Councillor Haggard.
I think Councilor Patola was.
Ooh, Councillor Patola then. Councillor Haggard.
Thank you. For the Industrial Heritage Center building, we have over $300,000 scheduled for improvements this year and $474,000 scheduled for next year. This was a building that was scheduled to be demolished over 20 years ago, so I'm concerned about spending that kind of money on an old building that was going to be demolished. So I think that's something that we can look at. Do we want to keep this building? Do we want to move the Industrial Heritage Center? Is there somewhere else that they could move to and be quite happy? I just want to keep putting this kind of money into a building that old, that was going to be demolished. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Haggard. Councillor Patola.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment for anyone who's viewing at home or might not have the full report right in front of them. If you just look at the numbers, they seem quite daunting. And I wanted to point out that almost every facility, the lion's share of the budget that is required is for roof repairs. I don't know, Mayor Mina suggested we'll look at service levels. Maybe we should include a service levels of bribing the god of rain, so it just don't need roofs anymore. But they're clearly integral to everything that happens in that individual facility, whichever it is the roofs must be replaced. So it's something that I think everybody in the city is aware that roofs have lives. Our roofs have lives, and that is what the major part of these expenses are going to be over the next 5 years. So to not replace a roof means we may not be continuing with the service that happens under that roof. And I welcome comments from the public with regards to those services. And certainly, perhaps that could be a question that's presented to new candidates for office so that we have some idea where the public is thinking and we can be guided thereby. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patola. And I think just going back to that, the comment from Councillor Haggard, it isn't just what we want to do with that building or how much money, it's what the people inside, where do they go? And especially with the old arena, that is, a lot of that stuff is the city property and city heritage. So I totally understand that. So
Yeah, we need to investigate where they could go, I think.
that's right. Yeah. Yes. So absolutely. So it's multifaceted. Madam Corporate Officer, it was just a request to put the page 81 on the screen, if that's possible, Councillor. And so I was just going to go through just a couple real quickly, if I could. So just the Parks Yard building, we have 2029 budget for a roof replacement. However, we are in the process of doing that right now. Is that still, is that something that's still going to be looked at in 2029?
Chair Mealy, what we're doing right now is the Public Works building, and the Parks building is on the lower section. So yes, that is another roof that is scheduled and in the same vintage. So there is some risk with those roofs.
Thank you very much. And just with Bob Daly Stadium, which is on page 82, I see that we have a repaint the grandstand next year and then replace the grandstand roof the following year. I would humbly suggest, without having a lot of experience, that we would do that the other way around, that we would do the grandstand roof first and then paint the grandstand. Just the mere fact that we can paint the grandstand and then expose it to weather and construction and everything else, then repaint it again. So, like I said, I'm not an experienced gentleman, but that just means common sense to me. But sorry, there was other comments though. Councillor Solda.
I'm just kind of curious to know what structural crack means on the works yard, page 82. What does that mean?
Yeah, through the chair. So structural cracks, you'll see in a few of them, and this includes the old arena where the industrial heritage site is in right now. It has actually in for next year a whole structural review. So that means this third-party review of our buildings notice some type of shifting or structural movement, which would cause them to say, hey, we can't do the full review right now, but we're suggesting that you get somebody to look at this to make sure the integrity of the structure is good. Now, for a crack in the works yard, I'm guessing something shifted. They weren't as concerned, so they pushed the structural review off a few years. So I'm guessing it's something that's forming that they could monitor. Probably in the fulsome report when we get it, it'll probably suggest to monitor to see if the cracks are getting big. But if they're in this budget, I'm guessing the ones that are this year, 2025, probably had enough concern that they're saying you should review the whole structure of this building.
Any other comments from the committee? Questions? Seeing none, we have a proposed motion to receive the report. Direction of the committee.
Wait.
Oh, Councillor.
What about the other pages? Oh, we're not there. Okay, never mind.
All right. Councillor Haggard.
I'd like to move that the Committee of the Whole receive the report Facility Condition Assessment, Preliminary Financial Considerations dated November 14th, 2024.
Thank you, Councillor Haggard. Do we have a seconder? Second, Councillor Patola. Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Director of Finance. And if you'd like to stick around for the next one.
Yes.
City of Port Alberni tax rates, history, and tax share. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so another information for report, information report to provide supporting information to possibly review tax rates, tax share burden, as they call them, and then just some of the history that we've seen in the city of Port Alberni, understanding that we were a major industry community and we relied on that tax base for many years. And when we think about when we built some of these facilities, the Aquatic Center and the old arena, that was before the ACRD was actually in existence. So you can see, the major industry supplied these facilities to make the livelihood, the community, a great place to live. But we've seen that shift for major industry from, I think back at that time about 60% now to 18%, as you see in the report. So this is, that's a significant shift. That is a large shift going to the residential component, as you see in the report. But yeah, I think it's something that is an interesting review that we've had, I guess, over the last 20 years or so. So one of the items that we've provided is just the impact on taxation should we see a shift of 1%. And obviously with the table on page 3 of the report, it shows that residential class, if it does take a shift of 1%, it equals about 1.66% increase over that 15% tax increase. When you have a smaller base for taxation, that table shows that obviously with business that would be a 20.64 increase rather than the 15% if we kept everything in that one property class. Moving to light industry, a 1% shift to that property class would see a 46.49% increase if we make that change, and major industry, it would be a 20.36 combined with a 15% increase if we remained everything else equal, and then the 1% shift. So it was kind of a context, and I think it was a discussion point that we had last April, just as far as tax share and providing information to the committee and council on how we set the tax rates. And council has the ability to set tax rates based on how they see fit in the community and what is fair, based on their view of fairness for taxation. And that has been that has gone through to the Supreme Court in 2009 when Catalyst, or it was maybe I think it was Catalyst at the time, took North Cowichan, Paul River, Campbell River, and Port Alberni to court on tax fairness. So that's provided to the committee for consideration on how the impact of moving a 1% shift would be. We did have a brief glimpse at the tax share in dollars as far as dollars go in each class. And if you look back to 2006, class 1 residential, I'll just hold here for a second while we bring it up. So class 1 and class 4 major industry were equal, essentially. It was at 40% each. But as we moved on and we made commitments to taxation for major industry, that started to drop. And we've had tax freezes for class 4 when we had the agreement to purchase the lagoon, and that ended, I think, in 2017 or 2018. And then we've seen reductions in major industry as the SOMAS curtailed and closed, and that property came out of the tax roll, and we're only left with the APD mill and the Catalyst mill with major industry, and a few other smaller components on the Port Authority properties, but those are essentially our two largest taxpayers in class 4. So when we look at the dollars, it is a significant shift, and now we're sitting at just under 18 million or under 19 million dollars for 2024 in residential taxation, and for major industry it's just under 6. So, and there is quite a shift there that you can see. We've also included the CPI for context over that same period of time and showing the overall tax increase for the city. So, we've had some very small increases over those years, pretty close to CPI. But the other factor in there is the non-residential construction costs. And much of what the city does is provide that non-residential construction costs. So when I was in prior roles, we were looking at that as a factor as far as looking at cost escalation on projects and not just CPI. So it provides more of a real-time impact on some of the projects that we actually are undertaking. So, and then often that has to do with regulation and commodity changes and standards. So those are things that often are factored into that non-residential construction costs, but CPI is a larger basket of goods, including food and other inputs that are like fuel. But when we look at non-construction, that's a factor that I think we should be looking at when we look at cost escalation to support those projects that if we do defer them, they're probably going to cost more than CPI, and that's what we've been finding. So I hope this provides a little bit more context to the committee and council to make decisions on not only tax share and tax rates, but if there's further information that the committee is seeking to make decisions on taxation, that'd be great to hear from the committee. And also understanding as we push projects off, we do see cost escalation. And as we shift more to the residential taxpayer, that would go beyond what we currently have status quo, all things being equal, for tax share in 2024 going to 2025. There would be impacts, obviously, greater than that 15% if we do make any change. So with that, I provide the committee opportunity to ask any questions.
Thank you very much to the Director of Finance. Questions, Councillor Solda.
It feels the weight on my shoulder here, but my question to is on page 88. Well, there's nothing really to look at, but what I want you to explain to the public, because a lot of people out there go, well, we have all this new construction happening in our community, and the population has grown. So you would think our tax base would have grown, and a lot of the public does not understand when they look at the tax increase in that, well, shouldn't it be going down if we suddenly have all these new builds and taxes? And so how does that work? Do you know, Mike, where I'm going with this question?
Chair Mealy, I'll try to provide just, I think you were looking at non-market change, some of those developments that we've seen, and definitely that has provided, a reduction year to year in the overall increase to the average residential home. So what we see is when we keep non-market change within that same class, and if we had a 15% increase, and let's say the 2% of non-market change it stays within that class, you'll see the tax impact actually lower than 15%. It would be, let's say, 13% for a figure that diluted that out. And we often see that. If you look in the financial plan, our overall taxation is higher than the actual impact in the residential class. Last year, we saw class 5 and class 5 and 6 take their non-market change equivalent and put that into the asset management reserve. Council made that recommendation, and that was followed in the financial plan. But residential class saw that non-market change, that new, diluted out from, I think it was 9.26 was the impact on the average single-family residential home, but we saw an overall tax increase of 11.01% with all the other factors. So that's kind of the difference in the impact of non-market change on the residential class. It does dilute the taxation, but we've seen other municipalities take that non-market change and support the growth in the community and put that into reserves or do a blend. And I've attended a seminar recently, and they discussed the policy actually to have that in play. So there is that clear direction from council that this is the method that we deal with non-market change. So it's something that I'd like to bring forward to the committee and council for consideration.
Any other questions from the committee? Councillor Patul?
The impact on property classes on a 15% increase and 1% overall tax share shift. Can you explain it again? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if this happens only when there's a 15% tax increase. If that's just the number that is being used for example's sake, and then the 1% overall tax share shift from who to who? Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks for the question, Councillor Patola. I apologize if it wasn't clear, and I'll try to clarify that. So 15% was used as a reference point. And on its own, if a 1% increase was made to the share of that class, it shows that it would, take out the 15%, it would be a 1.66% increase further in taxation if it was still a 15% increase, but we just shifted 1% to that class and all else remained equal. It doesn't, the impact on each one, I tried to illustrate the impact on each class of a 1% shift so that there was some context to how the committee's decisions and the council's decisions would be if we decided to change that tax share. Independently, I can provide that, but you can't take that as a summary and add them up. It's if that was just independently done to that class. So that was the attempt, and if I failed in that attempt, I'll try again to provide further context, but it was just trying to show the impact of 1% on each class, and because some classes have a much smaller share, the impact is that much greater. It just was that illustration. I hope that helps a bit.
You got it? That helps? I got it now. Thank you.
Anybody else from the committee? No messages from Madam Mayor by any chance? No, just making sure. Oh. Nope, that's somebody else. So if there are no other comments, We do have a motion, proposed motion here. How would council like it? Councillor Haggard.
I'd like to move that the Committee of the Whole receive the report, City of Port Alberni Tax Rates, History, and Tax Share dated November 18th, 2024.
Thank you, Councillor Haggard. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Patola, seconder. Any discussion? Thank you for the discussion, by the way. If seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Director of Finance. Next up, we have the Fire Control Bylaw. We have the Fire Chief with us tonight. Hello, Chief. Good to see you. And whenever you're seated and ready, you may start.
Thank you, Chair Maley. Yes, so before you today is a report coupled with the new fire control bylaw draft. So the current fire control bylaw was adopted in July of 2015. The fire control bylaw is a document which grants authority to the fire chief and other members of the Port Alberni Fire Department. The document indemnifies members of PAFD, specifies the services provided by PAFD, and sets out rules for residents, owners, and developers pertaining to fire safety. So we're seeking that the Committee of the Whole recommend to Council to give 3 readings of the fire control bylaw.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. To the committee, do you have any questions, comments? Councillor Solda.
Just what does ULC stand for? Some of these acronyms, a lot of people wouldn't understand if they were reading the document.
I think you're talking about a ULC certificate there, Councillor Solda?
That is the Underwriters Laboratory of Canada. I was stumped for a minute there.
Okay.
Well done, Chief.
And I
Councillor Solda?
do have more questions. I think it's on the fire chiefs. No, it's not. 149, is that your page? Not sure how far that went. Is that fire? Yep, I think so.
But that's
Nuisance, okay.
Sorry, that's the nuisance abatement bylaw. We'll get to that.
And just for future, could we have the acronyms in other presentations stated, just because the public does not understand what, and necessarily I might not understand either, so just put it that way.
There's a lot of acronyms, Councillor Solda, and we try our best. I know we do. Staff, sorry, Mr. CEO.
No, through the chair, we do try and explain every acronym before we use it. Sometimes one will slip by. And this one here is a common used phrase that's on lots of appliances and everything around. So it's probably one that lots of people don't know, but understand that it has something to do with fire and electrical.
No, absolutely. So, no, and I appreciate the comments or appreciate the question, then we can get it out in public, so I appreciate it. So, sorry. Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to pass along my impressions of this fire control bylaw. It's excellent. It certainly answered all my questions and seemed to be up to date as is appropriate. Only comment that I have is it refers to a number of schedules, and I note that we don't have the master plan for fire services yet, which may affect items in the schedules. And that shouldn't be a problem from my point of view in this matter going ahead, but that the schedules, my suggestion is the schedules be severed from the bylaw. So the bylaw is passed with regards to the sections, and then the schedules are passed by resolution of council to join in. The reason for that is that then council has ease in manipulating the schedules, which is kind of the nitty-gritty stuff, and the bylaw itself stays. Otherwise, if the schedules are actually included in the bylaw, to change anything in the schedule, like we want to change a fine from $100 to $150, we have to reintroduce the bylaw. So those are just my comments from a drafting perspective. Otherwise, excellent work. I really appreciated it. Thank you.
Just maybe to corporate officer or CIO, is that something that that's not typical practice? But I guess the question is, do the schedules have to be attached to the bylaws? I guess that's the question.
Yes, so generally speaking, we do include the schedules in the adoption of the bylaw, and then rather than an introduction of the bylaw by way of a change in schedule, it would be an amending bylaw to shift the schedule. So it is true that we would have to introduce a new bylaw by way of an amending bylaw.
Thank you for the clarification. Anyone else have any comments on this? No. No, you're right, Councillor. So, Councillor Patola.
So just to clarify, the reason for that comment, and we're here anyways, we can pass anything we want, and we're gonna come back next week. But it is simply because we don't have the master plan yet, and I didn't want to hold up passing this bylaw, waiting for the master plan. But it seems to me the master plan may very easily have some effect that we might want to change within the schedules, but not the bylaw itself. That's all.
So I guess the question would be at this time, do we want to go forward with the introduction of three readings, or we would want to wait for the master plan? I would take it with staff's recommendation that we can continue on with the introduction and then make the changes once the master plan is completed. Am I correct in saying that, Mr. CEO?
Yeah, through the chair, I would recommend to take that process when this bylaw has been completed. It is trying to meet the new standards. There may be some small changes in a few of the schedules, but we can deal with that at that time if needed. I know that the master plan has considered a lot of the schedules in here, and they have copies of them. I would hope that the consultant is aware. So I would recommend adopting the full thing and then changing it at a later date so we have it. But again, it's up to the council.
Thank you very much. Then it is the committee's, at the committee's whim. We have a proposed a motion, but if the committee would like to take another option, that's up to them. Councillor Haggard.
Thank you. I'd like to move that the Committee of the Whole recommend Council introduce and complete 3 readings of Fire Control Bylaw number 5122, 2024.
Moved by Councillor Haggard, second by Councillor Solda. Any other discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. All righty. Don't go anywhere, Chief. Bear Fire Master Plan preliminary findings. Interesting. To you, sir.
Thank you very much. So earlier this year, the City of Port Alberni approved the development of a number of master plans, including the Fire Master Plan. While the final report will not be available until 2025, there are a number of recommendations that pertain to the 2025 Master Plan. The preliminary findings report aims to address the 2025 budget implications. And joining us online, we have Jeff Cardile, who is with Bear, who we've contracted to do the master plan. So I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Good evening, Jeff. Thanks for waiting. Appreciate you late in the evening. You go right ahead, sir.
Yeah, good evening, Chair Mealy, and thanks for this opportunity. So I think I really need to position this as a preliminary finding, as the Chief has indicated. This is to help inform your budget plan for 2025 and your financial plan. So these are very preliminary. There's a lot of the rationale and objective analysis that needs to be included in the master plan. So this is just the quick, I'm going to use a quick and dirty sort of thing that indicates where we're leaning towards. There's a lot of process to go in terms of presenting the draft report in December to the chief and administration for their review, and to look at the evidence. Wherever we can, we use evidence-based decision-making and limit our subjectivity in terms of the recommendations that we make. So I just want to really position this as this is just really preliminary findings, and the fullness of the report will glean the rationale that we use to develop these recommendations. So I have the report in front of me here. I don't know in your room there what you're looking at, or if I need to share my screen to put it up, or maybe Chief Owens, you can help me with how to present this to council. If they have the document in front of me, I'm fine with that. Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Carl, I apologize. Yeah, we're just going to put your recommendations up on the screen and then we can go through them. I believe they start on page 139. And then we can go through them. And if you weren't going to do that, I was going to do that. So I'm glad one of us is going to do it. It's okay. So, but we'll go through it, and I appreciate you doing it. So we'll put it up there, and then we'll let you proceed, sir.
Okay, so what I'm looking at right now, Chair Mealy, is it'd be a 1.1 preliminary findings and recommendations, and under the heading staffing. Correct. Yeah, that's where we're at. So the first thing we looked at was based on staff consultation, face-to-face interviews we've done, and you'll note that there's a comparative community analysis in the report with other similar size. Some are bigger, some are smaller, and we looked at it and said, okay, what are some of the challenges we see for the Port Alberni Fire Department? And the first thing we see is, I think they're based on other fire service master plans we've done and other organizations we looked at, and we've done an extensive number of these, is I believe the chief and the deputy need some help in terms of administrative capacity. And we're recommending a 0.5 of an administrative FTE, and it would be to reduce the general administration requirements for the chief officers, to be the chief and dep in terms of budget preparation, staff admin, public requests, council report, corporate responsibilities. Like say, as we get into the report, you'll see later where we look at the organizations, the comparatives we have, and the 6 municipalities we look at all have some administrative capacity for the fire department in terms of meeting those administrative aspects. So that's 0.5 of an FTE, and we estimated that, and these are just rough estimated costs at this point, to be $35K per year. It certainly could come from within the organization if there is spare capacity, which I'd be surprised. So there could be somebody within your organization right now that could provide this support to the fire chief. The next recommendation, Chair Mealy, are you okay if I just go through it, or should we do questions on the fly?
No, what I'd like you to do, you fly at her and finish your recommendations, and council can take notes and if they have questions afterwards. But you go right ahead, sir.
Okay. The next one is to increase your suppression staff by 2 full-time firefighters or swing firefighters, which would be, there's a labor relations issue there that the chief and I have talked about, is increasing your current contingent of swing firefighters from 4 to 6. And that allows you to move them around for unscheduled absences and to help manage overtime. You have 20 firefighters right now, and you're trying to maintain 4 people on duty 24/7. What tips the scale in terms of managing that is any unanticipated, unscheduled absence or some other situation that takes your suppression staff from you. That creates some overtime issues. We believe there's an offsetting overtime, but also this provides you with the capacity to have an initial alarm assignment to meet the prescribed service level of a full service fire department during your peak period, which is during day shifts. You have a reliance on your automatic aid through your volunteer fire department in Cherry Creek and Beaver Creek and Sprout Lake. And we're looking at that, and we look at that from the next, say 3, 5, 10-year period. And what's the impact going to be on that in terms of the call volume that you're getting now? You're getting stack calls, coincidental, sequential emergencies. So this is just to provide some more response capacity in your operations, and it also helps remove the reliance on your chief and your deputies as part of the operational level. In our report, we'll talk about where the chief and the deputy should be strategic leaders. They should be looking to move the department forward, looking at continuous improvement, as opposed to being tied to operational responses. So this, combined with the reliance on your volunteer through the automatic aid and the ability to maintain that 4-person or 4 firefighter staff 24/7, we're looking at that and we're saying we think you need a couple more firefighters at this time to increase your response capacity and manage the stack calls, the overtime, as I stated in the report, reduces the requirement to have the chief officers respond to routine operational calls for service, and provides additional workload capacity for the chief's officers to lead and manage the department. The next recommendation we talk about is another 2 firefighters. And this one is, this one is to move your mechanic. You have a firefighter mechanic who currently is on a shift configuration. You would, again, this would be a labor relations a recommendation the chief would have to work through, is to have your mechanic work straight days. Again, that's your peak period, and you would have that person as an operational role as well as enhancing your fleet maintenance and be there like 4-day shift for 40 hours a week, where they specifically there to maintain the fleet, but also provide additional operational response. You have a medical call and a couple medical calls and a fire call, your system is overwhelmed right away. You only have 4 firefighters on duty. They form an engine company. So any type of coincidental or sequential emergency, anything that takes like a structural fire is going to overwhelm the system, where you're going to have to, again, rely on your automatic aid through your volunteers. So in this case, we say, if you had a firefighter mechanic on duty during your peak periods, which is 8 to 8, the analysis that we've done is your peak period, that person could be there to augment that response, as well as enhance your fleet maintenance. The next recommendation that we're looking at, that one's a no-cost one, other than the staff time and the labor relations in terms of changing the work environment for the firefighter mechanic who is currently on a shift configuration. The next one is another 2 firefighters, and this one is to be determined, and this is based on the impact of the automatic aid. And what we found in the data that we've analyzed is we really don't know. We know that there's an operational guideline in the automatic aid that the chief has put in place that says, for instance, Cherry Creek, you won't respond when you have 4 people on your engine company, and that's when you respond, because the volunteers, as you understand, are coming from their place of work or from their home. So the benchmarking data that we've got through the North Island 911 doesn't include those benchmarks. And so this is going to require, over the long term, to take a look at it and see how that's performing. And, having discussions with Cherry Creek and Beaver Creek, specifically, and of course, Sprout Lake, on the impact of the automatic aid and the amount of call volume that they're increasing in those volunteer departments to support the automatic aid agreement. So this one's, like I said, a little more strategic. There isn't a date on it. Certainly, we provided the cost, which is $281,000 per year, including your corporate benefits. But that's, like I said, it's a strategic one based on what happens when you look at your effective response force and how that automatic aid is performing. And I should say, part of this is, we just talked about your fire control bylaw. One of the recommendations you can almost guarantee that's going to be in the fire master plan is for council to provide the chief with a service delivery policy. You have the core services identified in your fire control bylaw. In this case, what you would do is you would put a policy statement together that says the Port Alberni Fire Department will respond to all calls for service in 10 minutes in 90% of all calls for service. And that provides the benchmark for that drives everything, your training, your core services, all those services you provide and the responses you provide. That would be the trigger, and the accountability. The chief can come back to you and say, we're achieving this, or we're not achieving this, and this is the reason why. We have increased call volume, whatever the context is. So part of this this recommendation is contingent on what policy, service delivery policy, the council ultimately lands on. Like I said, your fire control bylaw identifies your core services, but the granularity is Four Port Alberni firefighters will arrive within 10 minutes and 90% of all occurrences within the city boundaries within 10 minutes and 90% of the time, and a full alarm assignment within another increment, say 14 minutes, which would be the automatic aid coming in, or whatever the context, a recall of off-duty firefighters, which we understand from our interviews and where we are so far, that the recall of off-duty firefighters is not really yielding a large response. And it's understandable given the call volume that you have in the stack calls. This is going right across the country with full-time departments, is the reliance on recalling people off duty is waning in terms of the number of firefighters who respond when they're essentially on their weekends. The next recommendation was a training officer. We look at it used to be the Structural Firefighters Playbook. That has now changed to the minimum training standards for firefighters. And there's occupational requirements within that legislation, as well as the OH&S regulations for firefighting. You've already declared your department as full service. So we look at Port Alberni Fire Department, and we believe that a training officer would be essential in ensuring that your firefighters are safely trained and qualified to do the work that you ask them to do, which is clearly identified in the OH&S, including a critical task analysis. So basically it says that everything that you're asking them to do, they're trained and equipped to do that. So we look at this, and the leading approach is to establish a training officer. Again, this person would be working straight days and would have an operational role. So very quickly, you start to see that during your peak periods, Monday to Friday from 8 to 8, you would have enough firefighters on duty to handle the call volume that you're currently experiencing, and those as you go forward with a training officer, you have your fire prevention officer, you have your 4 people on duty, and your mechanic. So it gives you that depth in your response to handle those calls for service. The next one is with respect to the fire prevention officer. We understand you have one fire prevention officer who is flat out doing a great job, the best that he can. There is a new Fire Safety Act in the province, came effective, I believe, in April of this year. And it identifies the responsibility is for the owner, occupier of buildings or facilities to meet the fire code, but there is a compliance monitoring, and the municipality is identified in that act as the compliance monitoring agency. So there is some impacts with that new Fire Safety Act. Also, in our interviews and discussions with the staff, there is a need to enhance your public education and safety program and safety awareness throughout the city, and less reliance. Again, this is another position that will create less reliance on automatic aid for your routine calls during your peak period, which I see I have identified from 7 to 7 as opposed to 8 to 8. That would be the end of the staffing recommendations that we see as preliminary findings. Now we take a look at your fire station. And what we put in here was to look at a complete functional study. I know you've had a building conditions survey done. We've been provided that information from an engineering or structural perspective, but I think we need to look at it from a functional perspective to support the daily operations. Things like gender requirements. I believe you have your first lady firefighter. There's other more modern or approaches to fire department facilities to support a diverse organization compared to what it used to be, say 30 years ago. There's equipment issues and PPE, personal protective equipment for to be cleaned, and contaminated areas and decontamination areas, storage. So we're saying, let's take a look at this. Your last major upgrade, I believe, was 10 years ago, which provided some seismic work, if I'm not mistaken, and it's in my rationale. It was it's built in the '67. It's a dated building. Has undergone a number of renovations. A building conditions assessment was done in October. Did not go over the functionality of the building and workplace, and the entire space had been repurposed, resulting in poor overall flow. The chief tells me that he can't even have a confidential discussion in his office because just the way the offices are configured and the separations, the sound can travel through. There's one minor observation, but it's worth doing a complete review of the facility from a functional perspective to support the Port Alberni Fire Department today and moving forward. The next recommendation that we look at is you have 4 fire services in the immediate area within the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District. Is there an opportunity here to put together a regional training facility where they can get the valuable live fire training, auto extrication, a number of different confined space, and those types of hands-on training? And we're looking at this that says, if you look at it, maybe those 4 fire services, Port Alberni could be the lead, but you could put together a training center and have it available to all those departments. This is not a unique recommendation. When I was the fire chief in Vernon, they had the North Okanagan Regional Training Center, and also in Salmon Arm, they had the, just trying to think of the regional district there, it escapes me, but they had a regional training center in Salmon.
So that's a recommendation you could look at. It would lead to obviously some capital expenditures, but the approximate cost be $25,000, depending on the scope of the project, and have a third party consultant come in and look at the. I think my headset just died. Can you still hear me?
Yes, yeah, we can hear you. We noticed the change, but you're actually coming in a lot clearer now. So you go right ahead, sir.
Oh, okay. I got to put my I had my earbud on since 6 o'clock, and I think I just found out how long the battery goes. So, okay, we'll do it with the speaker on my laptop. Okay, so the next part here is the municipal comparative analysis. And again, this is just preliminary information. We look at population, budget, department size, full-time, paid on call. We look at department staffing. We look at the number of fire stations, call volume, the call types, and we put a lot of, we identify that you shouldn't do a direct comparison because every municipality operates differently, but it does provide a little bit of context to look at, in terms of where Port Alberni Fire Department is compared to similar, either smaller or larger communities. You see here where we have the land area of the 6 that we looked at. We looked at budgets, and when we look at your per capita costs, you're in the mid-range. You're not the most expensive, but you're not the least expensive either, which seems to us to be, it's efficient. You've got some issues in terms of staffing and meeting an effective response force, and your reliance on automatic aid, which we'll address in the master plan. We look at industry standards, if you have a standard of cover or the service delivery policy that I mentioned. And while you have your core services identified in your fire control bylaw, I think having benchmarks gives the fire chief the accountability to come forward and say, we're making it or we're not. Here's some things that are occurring in terms of our ability to provide a safe level of service based on the risk. And of course, the city's ability to pay for the service is a key factor in what we look at when we build this fire service master plan. There's no way you would put a fire station or a police station on every street corner in Port Alberni to manage the risk. So what is the risk tolerance that the city would like to see in terms of its fire department? The department profile, this is what I was talking about in terms of your staffing. You'll look and you'll see here the number of municipalities we looked at. Typically, they have 2 deputy chiefs or they have a large paid on call component. In the case of Port Alberni, right across the board, you're less than those that are compared. They have administrative support, sort of thing, and like I say, two chief officers. And the other key point to make on this is your chiefs right now are on duty 26 weeks a year. The deputy chief Cross and Chief Owen swap 1 week, another week to be on call to support that operations. And I can tell you from the number of master plans that we've done that this creates a lot of problems for the chief officers in terms of workload and their ability to have quality time off duty. Every other week you're on call, you got to stay within the city or whatever the context is in terms of your guidelines. You have to be available to respond 24/7 depending on what's happening, along with your normal workload. So having the additional staff that we've talked about in this provides that depth that you would need to provide your chief and deputy with a better work-life balance than what's occurring at the present time. So then we look at your response data and see the types of call, and because everybody does their responses differently, we try to come up with a common denominator in terms of types of calls, fire emergencies, motor vehicle rescues, hazardous material, non-emergency, and others like public service. And we look at your call volumes. You can see there, we put that together and say, okay, does Port Alberni have a high level of call volume comparatively? And if so, what's the reason for that? What are your fire-related calls and your medical calls? So the final paragraph here just says, look, we looked at these comparative communities and you're among the mid-range, third or fourth within the municipalities surveyed for operating budget, percentage of municipal budget, and cost per capita. We consider this to be appropriate and efficient for the city the size of Port Alberni. I think you're hovering close to 19,000 or 18,500. And again, I want to reemphasize that you can't, you know, these are broad statistics. You can't do a direct comparison. Chair Milley, that concludes my preliminary report findings, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Carlisle. Really appreciate that. To the committee, do we have any questions at this time? Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Chair Mealy. Chief Owens, the last time you came to council, you gave some statistics on how your numbers of medical calls have increased, and most of those medical calls are due to mental health and addiction calls. So your presentation was very timely because it was right before UBCM, and I was part of a panel discussion on how mental health and addictions issues affect our community. So I was able to use the numbers that you did in your presentation. And I just wanted to say thank you because you made me sound like I was really smart. And also talked a lot about compassion fatigue that our firefighters are suffering from. So that was talked about a lot as well. So we do sympathize with what the firefighters are going through right now. And I was reading this, I think the important thing is we have to look at ways, how can we decrease those number of calls to save the firefighters from that compassion fatigue? I think for the first time in the history of the Port Alberni Fire Department, there are firefighters that are leaving and going to other jobs, which was completely unheard of before. So a while ago, Councillor Patola suggested, and I can't remember the correct name of it, Councillor Patola, but it was teams of people who would go out on these mental health and addiction calls versus firefighters or
Crisis response teams.
Thank you. That's what that's what I was looking for. So I think we should pursue looking at something like that in order to help decrease the number of calls. And also, I was wondering, the fire prevention officer and the training officer, is there any possibility of partnering with the ACRD instead of having like a fire prevention officer just for the city? Could we look at having one for the whole region? Our training officer, instead of just looking for the city, looking at training opportunities for our volunteer fire departments in the region as well, that would help cut cost and probably do maybe a better job if we could incorporate the whole region.
Yeah, certainly, certainly that's something that we can investigate. Of course, this report that's been prepared, and thank you to Jeff and the team at Bear for putting this together. We kind of rushed them because we knew that we were up against the financial plan here and wanted to get some numbers in front of council. So many thanks for that. So this report, the first time I laid eyes on it was less than a week ago. But I think that is something that's probably worthwhile to pursue, is engaging with the ACRD to inquire if there would be any interest in a partnership there.
I would just add to that the study that we propose, the feasibility study, that would be in the scope, would be in there, that it would be a regional training center and quite likely share a regional training officer to provide the legislative requirements for the minimum standards. So that is all envisaged as part of that particular feasibility study.
Thank you very much. I see that the Madam Mayor has her hand up. If we could try Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Hopefully it works this time. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go right ahead.
Wonderful. Thank you for the report and for all the work that's gone into it. And I want to just, I think, echo Councillor Haggard's comments and just say that I think the focus, unfortunately, though there's a lot of good information in the report, I think our focus needs to be on how to reduce the number of calls going to our fire departments so that our firefighters do not burn out. While I think that every single one of the recommendations put forward today in this report are legitimate recommendations, and I can understand the rationale for each one of them. They represent an increase in level of service in many ways that I just don't believe we are in a position in the city of Port Alberni to even consider at this point in time. I think that the information included in the report is incredibly valuable. However, with the current structure of our fire department being solely funded by the city of Port Alberni taxpayers with fantastic support in automatic mutual aid. You know, I don't want to disregard that at all because we help the regional areas and they help them. However, with the funding being solely by the regional or by the city of Port Alberni taxpayers, with the capital facility improvements that are needed in all of our facilities across the board, and with significant tax increases as a starting point as it is just as a result of things like RCMP contract costs and things that are completely outside of our control, I just cannot imagine us being in a position where we can even consider increases in service level at the fire department. So I take this initial report as, I think, a really fantastic picture of what we would like to be able to consider, but in my opinion, just unfortunately out of line with where we're at right now and where our current budget considerations are going. You know, for further work to this, I think I would be more interested in looking to, are there any further efficiencies that can be gained within the department that we have? Is there a composite paid on call model that we should be considering and potentially in partnership with the regional district? Is there a part-time model that we should be considering, again, in, you know, partnership with the regional district? I just feel like, you know, I recognize that where we're at right now, we're burning out our firefighters and we can't continue to do that. So we have to look at taking calls away. At the same time, in my opinion, we just can't increase the level of service that we have. So in my opinion, I'd like to see recommendations be a bit more creative in how do we get from where we are today, rather than just increasing level of service, how do we get to a better service, you know, with the firefighters that don't end up largely burnt out in the long run, while also recognizing that we just can't increase the cost of this service for the city of Port Alberni taxpayers. So I know that's no easy task, and appreciate all the information that's been put forward. I would love to be in a position to implement, but I just don't think that we even will end up in a position to consider implementing any of this at this point in time. So if there's further information that could be brought back that could bring focus to, is there an alternative model we should be looking at that would be more sustainable long term, I would be personally really interested in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do appreciate that. Just for a little context as well for for the people at home. 2023 total call volume was 2,823. 67% of those were EMS-related calls, and only 32% were fire-related calls for the City of Port Alberni's firefighters. So, Councillor Solda.
Wow. When I first read this report, first of all, the mayor took the words right out of my mouth, but she said it a lot better than I would have said it. So this is not the first time since I've been sitting on council that all these recommendations have not come forward to council in some way or another. Regional Training Center, I mean, that's been a discussion in the past, and I would love to see the ACRD be part of the discussions. And I know when I sat on the ACRD board, that was discussed amongst the departments there. When I look at the staffing in that, I don't know how I would tell the public or explain to the public how many staff would need to be hired at the fire department as the recommendation has been put forward. I think the mayor has said it all for me, and for me to be convinced, you would have to really sit down and talk with me, because I could not support that. But I love the report, and I've seen a report similar to what I see today. I just wanted to bring that forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Solda. Anybody else on the committee would like to have any questions, comments? If not, there is a proposed motion that is on our agenda. Unless the committee would like to go elsewhere with this, I'll leave it up to the committee.
Motion to receive.
Yeah.
Motion to receive the report.
So that is the Committee of the Whole received the Bear Fire Master Plan Preliminary Findings Report. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor Haggard, seconder. Any other discussion on this? Seeing none? Oh, sorry, Councillor Solda.
I just want to say to the fire chief, if we can find the way the mayor has explained to find other ways, I would be really interested, because I think the fire department does a great job of all the things that's happened since COVID and all that. I would like to see something come forward to us on the mayor's. Thank you.
I concur as well. I was at the 7-Eleven the other night, and the fire department responded to an overdose, and I can't be more thankful for the people that work in the fire department. So, all right, we have a motion on the floor. Any other discussion? Seeing none? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thanks, Chief. Councillor Haggard.
Before we move on, just to sort of add to what I talked about, is there any way that we could maybe investigate having some community crisis response teams? Did I get that right? Into our community. I know it was like a pilot project or from an organization, so I would like to pursue that if we could get that into our community, and that would take some of the pressure off the firefighters.
Staff, go ahead, Mr. CEO.
Yeah, thanks for the comment. We continue to work after our meetings at UBCM. It was mentioned that we are next on the list. So we are actually approaching the ministries. I know during election time, there wasn't a lot of people talking, but I'm sure that discussion is going to ramp up now. We got some really positive feedback from all of our meetings at UBCM. So we had correspondence after it, but then the election happened. So, I know that they were looking at if there was any way to look at 2025. Now, part of that is, would we have to fund some or would we not? Or how does it build up to be a full functioning provincial mandate, just like it is in some of the pilot communities?
Thank you, Mr. CEO. And just a comment, if it's going to fall under, for whatever reason, the Ministry of Health, I think we have a direct line to that as well now. As our MLA is the Minister of Health, so that's great. Seeing nothing else, we'll move on. Nuisance Abatement Bylaw number 4705-3. Report from the Manager of Community and Safety and Social Development providing an amendment to the Nuisance Abatement Bylaw. Thank you for waiting, Matt. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Chair Mealy. In front of you, you have the revised nuisance abatement bylaw. This is the recommendation is that the Committee of the Whole recommend council to introduce and complete 3 readings of this revised bylaw for 705-3 in 2024. Brief summary, this bylaw hasn't been updated since 2018. We did quite a bit of work on the wording, defining nuisance, definitions for specific areas such as persons, public place, occupier, owner, real property, etc. Updated section 3 on prohibition. And the Schedule A has updated financial implications. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? I think Councillor Solda was ready for one here.
No, it's not a question. I'm still coming off the fire department. Regarding your fees on page 152, I love the report, and it's great that it's all being updated and coming into our year. I just think the fees should be a lot higher. And, you know, when I look at the staff time is valuable to our community and to our, I just think it should be higher. And plus, there should be a charge for reoccurring. If you have to keep going back every year to a place, and I think we need to bring up the charges because I don't think we're charging enough. And that's how I feel. I've felt like that for a long time. And, you know, if I keep getting a call, as an example, for my alarm going off, and this is in the past, and it went off 3 or 4 times, and if I haven't handled the problem, I better handle the problem because that fine is going up, and I sure in the heck don't want to pay that. So, I mean, the fire chief, as an example, his time is, worth a lot more than what we're charging, and any of the staff. And I think we need to look at increasing the fees plus a reoccurring charge. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Solda. Appreciate that. Maybe just a question to the Manager of Community Safety and Social Development. Got to get that right. And I'm going to assume it's different for all of the positions that are on this Schedule A, but obviously you went forth with some process to get to those different values. How was that undertaken? I guess that's the question.
I would defer to the CAO
was
on
it,
this.
I apologize. Or was it simply just since we're updating 2018, was it a percentage above what the 2018 schedule was?
And through the chair, I believe the Director of Finance looked at our hourly charge out rate. Now, again, if council wants us to change that and have repeat, we can always look at that and inflate it to whatever council wants. You know, usually when we're charging out an hourly rate, we don't include the administrative charges on top of that. It is common practice in agreements to charge an additional 10 to 20% on that. So if it is council's will, we could increase the fees to include our charge out rate plus administrative cost of whatever percentage of that would be. And then also if there are return ones, if you would like to put a penalty in, I don't know if that penalty would be on the hourly wage, but it could be a straight hourly cost based on a repeat offense.
Thank you, Councillor Solda.
I have no objection to having, like, if they're charged and then they get a warning, right? And the next, like there could be 1 or 2 chances and then the third, you're out.
CAO.
Through the chair, again, when we do enforcement, we've already tried all the other tools. We've given warnings, we've worked through the full process. So when we're at this point, it's something that is, again, somebody is not becoming compliant and we have to take those next steps. So that's the whole reason why we have these. So we, again, in each situation is different and some of them are complex, but as we work into them, we do follow that process.
All right, they get that fine, or that charge, that's it. And then after, let's increase it.
Thank you, Councillor Solda. You bring up a good point. I think something to think about later would be, or I mean, at any point really, is you have one, say, particular property that's a nuisance, and you've gone there once this year, and you're gonna go back for the same problem next year. Maybe it's add just 10% to that. as a reoccurring, but good points, thank you. Anybody else on the committee that would like to speak to this? It is a good report, thank you very much, Troy, appreciate that. No, okay, so then we do have a proposed motion that is on the agenda. What is the committee's wish?
Sure if I'm going to word this right, but I actually, I don't know if, maybe the CAO can explain. So do we pass this, or do we add to it, or do we come back? What's the best recommendation?
Are you, sorry, Councillor Sola, just clarification. Are you meaning if we would like to propose a change, such as you're talking about, a change to those, then perhaps what you could do is discuss that change right now, and then we can move forward with those changes and begin and send it to council with the recommendation of these changes and start three readings? That would be...
Through the chair, yeah, so that could be correct. You could also have us make the changes and bring it to council with those changes. So we could make that the motion and update the hourly rates to include an administrative cost and whatever percent council wants for a repeat offense on that.
All right, Councillor Solda?
I would rather them make the changes and make the recommendation and bring it back to council. And so do you want us just to the chair? Do we want to receive the report, or do we want to do a first, second reading, or wait until a report comes? How do you want to handle that?
Well, it's the committee's choice. Again, this is just that we are recommending to council. So we can either recommend to council today, say, to make the changes right now, so state the changes that we want, send it with staff, and then it comes back. Or as is, we can recommend to council for the 3 readings as is. There's a couple things that committee can do. It just depends on what you like in it, Councillor Solda.
I would rather have the staff bring back a report on some changes, and I'll just, I won't make it a recommendation other than I recommend.
Mr. CAO.
Yeah, I don't know how
Staff.
to word that.
Yeah, through the chair, if is your objective of this to increase the fine rate on Schedule A? Is
Yes.
that one and would you like that to be 10, 15, 20%?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So then I can make the changes and bring it to council. And then if you want to charge, as the chair has mentioned, a repeat offense with a 10% increase to those amounts, we could change that language, include it in Schedule A, and bring it to council for the readings.
I would rather see the increase of, let's go 25%, and recurring a charge of 50% extra. I'm not playing around because this has been an ongoing situation regarding nuisance bylaw, and people aren't taking us serious. So it's time to be serious.
So I guess that would be, so the question at this point is, that is what Councillor Solda is proposing. Are we asking staff to bring that back again at a future committee of the whole meeting with those changes?
Yep.
Staff, is that?
Through the chair, yeah, we can bring it to a future committee of the whole meeting, but we could also have it ready for the council meeting. I'm not sure.
fine, council
I don't
meeting's
believe it would take a lot to change those numbers and have that for council to consider, if the committee wishes that.
Council meeting is fine.
Okay, so I guess it would be, the motion would be to increase Schedule A, all fees by 25%, and include a reoccurring 50% charge on properties that are nuisance properties, not nuisance properties, sorry, reoccurring properties, if you want to call it that.
Yes.
Okay. So that's a motion. Do we have a seconder? Let's go there. Councillor Haggard?
May I ask a question before I second it?
Yes.
Thank you. CAO, would you recommend us increasing the rates by 50% for second occurrences, or just have the hourly rate plus a flat fee charge?
Through the chair, again, that is at the will of council. Again, as administration has brought it forward, we didn't have a reoccurring fine. If you'd like us to do research into other communities on what that would look like, then we would have to bring this back to another committee of the whole with examples and some research. Now, again, that does take time. It depends on where council lies on this. If you'd like to follow what Council Solda says, administration can do that. If there's a different percentage, we can do that as well.
Okay, well, I'm going to wait a couple more seconds. I'm looking for a seconder on this. Madam Mayor, if you have an option to, you don't have to, obviously, but if you'd like to chime in. If not, that's okay. Okay, well, well, 1 second. Councilor Bertola?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not opposed to the concept of increasing penalties when there's increasing occurrences. I'm not sure that it's as simple as the phraseology that Councillor Solda has used. Yeah, and I'm only firing on my 9 o'clock brain at this time. So I think it's important to pass this so that we are bringing our bylaws up to date. Up to date would include the preference of the current council to have increased penalties. But I'm not sure that the suggested increases are most efficacious. So I would suggest that we pass it as it is and ask for the further information with regards to repeat offenders be provided with the research and the suggestion from staff.
All right, Mr. CAO, and then I'll work on that motion.
And also through the chair, on reflecting and receiving a text, also I believe that the rates set in the bylaw have to be defendable. So, you know, if we are doing a wage, charging an administration fee, we should try to fall within the bounds of what a usual administration cost is on processing. So again, if we go too much above that 20%, we might be into an area that might be not as beneficial. On the repeat offense, maybe that's why they do a set repeat offense. I'm not sure, and we could do further investigation on that.
Councilor Bertola again.
I note that this doesn't create a penalty, it creates a bill. And it's not in substitution for, but it's supplementary to the property maintenance bylaw, the building standards bylaw, the noise control bylaw, the anti-littering bylaw, the fireworks regulation bylaw, and any other relevant city bylaws. And those other bylaws, maybe not each and every one of them, because I haven't read each and every one of them, but generally, those other bylaws have penalty sections. So I think where Councillor Solda is interested in having increased penalties to encourage compliance, that might not necessarily be appropriate in this bylaw, because this bylaw walks side beside the other bylaws that have the penalty sections. Those are just thoughts.
Mr. CAO.
Sorry,
I apologize, Mr. CAO, I apologize. Madam Mayor, you had your hand up first, I apologize. Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I was just going to say that I do know that we are not permitted to create penalties or fees that essentially create a new tax. And so, as Mike said, our fees have to be defensible in that method because we're not permitted under the community charter to just charge whatever taxes we aren't or we would like. So I do know, like several years ago, when we were looking at a separate issue, we went through this trying to create sort of increased fees for different things, and we're told that we couldn't as a result of this. Like you're effectively creating a new tax that you're not permitted under the community charter to charge. I appreciate the spirit of what is being discussed here. I would suggest we pass the motion as it was originally put forward and then make a subsequent motion to ask staff to explore if if there is a way to justify an increased fee or penalty charge for recurring offenders. Because ultimately it's not our job as a council to determine if something is permitted or not. We have staff for that. I think if we leave the motion as it was originally and make a second motion, we'll be able to cover what we probably all have a consensus on and get better information for the next council meeting.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I concur. I actually have it written out that the Committee of the Whole directs staff to investigate proposed higher rates and reoccurring nuisance property penalties by comparing with other communities. So that was my proposed motion after the original motion. So Councillor Solda, you did make a motion. There wasn't a seconder. I'll consider that off the table. Would anybody like to make the original motion at this point?
I'd like to move that the Committee of the Whole recommend Council introduce and complete 3 readings of City of Port Alberni Nuisance Abatement Bylaw number 4705-3 2024.
Thank you, Councillor Haggard. Councillor Solda said she is seconding that. Any other discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, motion is carried. And then I would make a motion that Committee of the Whole direct staff to investigate proposed higher rates and reoccurring nuisance property penalties by comparing it with other communities. We're good there. Second, Councillor Solda, thank you very much. Anybody else? Any discussion on that? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed, motion is carried. Thank you, Council. Thank you very much. Hold on, got to get it right. Manager of Community Safety and Social Development. There we go. I got it. My cheat sheet, sorry. Thank you. Alrighty, next up is the flag policy. Director of Corporate Services, please.
Thank you, Chair Mealy. So today's report provides the committee with an updated flag policy reflecting a shift in authorization from Council to the Chief Administration Officer. Flag policies provide direction and guidance to city staff in the display of flags outside and inside city facilities and at city ceremonies in conformance with accepted national protocols. Today, staff are recommending rescinding of the previous flag policy established in 2011 to be replaced by flag policy number 300-0-2 to reflect facility flagpole changes and revisions and additions to recognized half-masting days in alignment with the Government of Canada rules for half-masting. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Director of Corporate Services. Yeah, things have changed since 2011, obviously, and there is 5 flag poles out front here and at the multiplex. So there's different criteria for how the flags are presented. My question would be, does this policy change how the flags are being presented outside of City Hall?
No, it does not. So we consider the 2 new flagpoles and the configuration as 2 separate entities. So we have the 3 that are flying together, which are presently the Canadian flag, the Taschat and Hupachesset flags, and then separately we have the City of Port Alberni flag and the provincial flag.
Thank you very much for that explanation. Do we have any questions from Council? Councillor Solda.
I'm going to move that the Committee of the Whole recommend Council to rescind the flag policy dated May 9th, 2011.
Second, Councillor Haggard. Do you have any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, motion is carried. Councillor Solda.
And I'll move that the Committee of the Whole receive the report of flag policy dated November 13th, 2024 and flag policy number 3000-2.
Second.
Thank you very much. Councillor Solda. Councillor Haggard is a seconder. All those, discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, motion is carried. Thank you very much, staff. Really appreciate it. Unless there's anything else, it is now time for question period. An opportunity for the public to ask questions of the committee. For those participating electronically, please use your raise a hand feature and you'll be called upon to speak in the order of which it appears. Is there anybody that would like to address committee for question period today? Seeing none. Thank you very much, everyone. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Councillor Solda, second.
I'll second.
Councillor Haggard, all those in favor? Opposed, motion is carried. 9:24. Thank you very much all. A busy day for everybody. We really appreciate it.